Yes, it's much clearer.
Okay, just keep the feedback coming and we'll make the necessary adjustments. So my apologies for that. So Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, the affirmation. Abdoi Kaleh Namazurat Wu-Fakur Ame Kasam'un Empa Pa'ut Anuki Jawef Pa Ashuk Empa Pa'ut Wu-Kaleh Ashuk Kawun Jawef Nea Anuki Kasam'un Empa Pa'ut Wu-Pa Pa'ut Kawun Kasam'un Emnea Anuki Wahu Ameh Pa Pa'ut Wu-Pa Pa'ut Kawun Wahu Ameh Naya Nakuk Hadur Najo Ameh Kasam'un Empa Pa'ut Wu-Khabub Ameh Mushachas Nakuk Kadur Kawan Kaleh Pafef Nakuk Dayur Jawef Pa Pa'ut Ameh Wase Ameh Dayarni Kawun Lakei Bakoy Jawef Pa Pa'ut Anuki Abed Bi Nafashni Pa Pa'ut Kawun Anuki Pa Pa'ut Kadur Nakuk Kadur Pa Pa'ut Amul Nakuk Amul. So let's translate that back into English. So we said begin all prayers and thinking as a part of the all. And then we said, I am in the divine love of the all expanding, and all divine love is in me. I am a part of the all expanding, and the all expanding is a part of me. I am one as the all expanding, and the all expanding is one as me. I can succeed as a part of the all expanding and fail as an individual person. I can be all that I want in the all expanding, as long as my want is to stay in the all expanding. I am never by myself. The all expanding is I am. The all expanding can, I can. The all expanding does, I do. So that was Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, a cultural expression of a very famous one in our culture. And just so we start off the class correctly and connect with our ancestors and invoke the positive energy of our etheric ancestors, who we refer to as the Panatharu, where the English word nature comes from, and all of that is part of existence, known as Pa'ut. Now, if you just join us for the first time, very quick induction. So if you need to adjust your sound for any reason, you should have this task bar here on the device of your choice. And if you need to adjust your audio settings, and you can do so by clicking on the left-hand side. Any messages for us that are not questions, so basically general feedback, then and it could be feedback in relation to class, different things, etc. Sounds not working correctly. Then select the chat option there, select everyone, and then, as I say, place your comment in there. So you need to select everyone because I think the default points to us as hosts and panelists. So we want to make sure everybody can see what you're saying. Unless it's a personal message, then please select everyone. Now, there are two ways to ask questions. It is an interactive session today, so do not sit there in ignorance if you do not understand what is going on. So you can raise your hand, and if you do so, then you're going to come through by way of the facilitator today, Harat M. Habab, and he will ask the question he will give you the permission to unmute yourself. So you receive this message on your device, you need to unmute yourself, and then you'll be able to come through and ask your question. If you have dialed into today's session, then those options are slightly different. So *9 to raise your hand, and then when prompted, i.e. your name is called, then you need to press *6 to unmute yourself, and then *9 to mute yourself. *6 to mute yourself back again. So once we give you the permission to unmute yourself, you can do so at will. So we ask you just to stay muted as to not disturb the class today. Now, if you do not want to come through live and ask your question verbally, you can do so in the written fashion. So just need to click on the Q&A button and press that, and then type your question in, and Harat M. Habab, one of the other facilitators, will ask that question on your behalf periodically through the class. And if it's not been answered satisfactorily, then please give feedback or place a follow-up question to the one that you have placed in there. So you should be able to create a train off of the same question if necessary. Okay, we're not running polls today, so generally you may have some quizzes at certain points, so that option is there for us if you want to do something live. So if we do that, then we'll prompt you, we'll run the poll, and then you'll receive the various different options that you can click depending on what type of question that we're asking. So again, as I say, it is an interactive session today. So please ask questions if you do not understand something. Otherwise, there's no point in you or I even being here if what we're communicating is not being understood. Some things clearly you may have heard for the first, or be hearing, for the first time. And so you'll need to go away and do your own research. And that accounts for all of the aspect of what we're communicating across today. Excuse me. So very quick introduction. Who is the master teacher? Well, you are hearing, I suppose, the doctrine brought to us, called Wu-Sabat by Dr Malachi Z, Kabina York Okran, born in Takoradi, Ghana, which is a city, a small city, coastal town, or city probably now because it's growing exponentially. In West Africa, in Ghana. He was born June 26, 1945, and born to Mary Abba Akran-York, who we know as Fatima. So we acknowledge we are a matriarchal culture, as is all things in nature. Matriarchal starts with the feminine forces first, and so we acknowledge that and ensure that basically when we're studying or looking at teachers or people who are supposed to providing us with information, then you need to do a thorough research, on the individual concerned. And certainly, if you're talking about genes, where you think it all starts from, at least for us, as in the physical, then we need to look at the parents, and in this case, give credit to the parents insofar as Mary Abba Akran-York, because without her, there'd be no physical being in terms of the physical being, Dr Malachi Z York, so 1/3 of him is of her, and in addition, she obviously created the physical structure in her mind, and through the birthing process, enabled that to manifest physically. So we're very grateful to her, and she now, having crossed over, forms part of our ancestry as our Muslafu, or ancestors. Here you see her in our clan mother attire. We are matriarchal in our tribal form, and that has now been passed on to her daughter, Dauta Mutpataret Atum Raye, following the mitochondrial lineage, which is always passed from mother to daughter. You cannot have lineal succession, one may say, by having a son. It only goes down one generation. So if you have multi-generational, then you must have a daughter to carry on your line. His father, Al-Hadi Abdul Rahman Al-Mahdi, again from a famous royal family in Sudan, and he is the grandson of Muhammad Ahmad Al-Mahdi of Sudan, also known as the Mahdi, as you can see there in his title and name as well. Tragically, he was assassinated in 1970, but nonetheless, the two of them coming together, their love produced the solution for our tribe, race, in this day and time, as all races on the planet, or race or planetary nations, as we discussed last week, have a warner or a teacher or representative for them, who are able to advocate on their behalf, and also clearly, in this particular case, have a certain mission or a job in order to transform their people out of ignorance back into knowing who they are again. So our ancestors use a tried and tested methodology of updating the race insofar as what they need for their ascension journey, okay, or to fulfill their potential, i.e., you are created to be something within this environment, being called nature, was by natural nature, and the rules of existence, at least for us who were there in the very origin or beginnings of things, is to being, becoming, became. So those are the rules. So we must be being, obviously we're coming into existence out of stillness, into motion out of stillness, becoming, so we're growing into, we have a growth pathway according to natural nature, and then became, obviously, where we fulfill our potential because we've become what we're supposed to be. Understood? And so ultimately that is to exist. But obviously our people have found themselves in a situation where we have forgotten what that original universal journey was for us. And so therefore our ancestors who have walked this path before know to send ones back from out of our own ancestry to come back and teach. So that's our way. So we don't find ourselves, not saying there's anything wrong, particularly with archaeology or paleontology and other types of sciences that seek to find out what happened in the past. However, we're all connected to this mental reservoir of information, and the planet has its own memory system, referred to as a morphogenetic field. And so therefore, the answers per se are already there. They just need to be accessed in a certain way. And in our case, as I say, a teacher was sent back. And in ancient Egypt, that being they referred to as Tahuti. But that wasn't his proper title, I suppose. His proper title in the culture was Amun Nabab Rayata, and that is a vehicle or a vessel that your ancestors used to communicate certain information that we need in this day and time to aid our transformation. And so the Hindus have their own word for it. It's referred to as avatar. In the Islamic degree, it's called an Ilah Mutajasid, understood? And so this is a vehicle or vessel that your ancestors used to communicate information to you. So the combination, this is Master Teacher at age 25, and the combination that they needed to deal with the religious degrees or ignorance that had been created by religion, so religion versus what those people, so the Sands people as the first people on this planet who were optimized for the environment and placed there and grown and carefully cultivated within the environment by our ancestors. They don't know nothing about no Bible, Quran, the Torah, and all these different other books, understood? So that first doctrine and culture, we're far away from that in terms of where we are, what you did as modern day monotheistic religion, which is basically probably the most popular in the world today. And so this combination was needed to really walk us back to what we say today as actual facts, in the sense, or the reality of what we were dealing with. But at that time, we wanted religion. This is in the 60s going into the 70s. So a certain combination was necessary and needed to deal with our mindset at that time. So even though we have a culture that is millions of years old, remember, as the genes tumble forward, it has to be adjusted to fit the mindset for where we are right now. Understood? So this is a living doctrine, Wu-Sabat, you understand, changing to fit what we need in this day and time, as I say, to emphasize or aid our transformation journey. So that combination was Isa al-Hadi al-Mahdi, the physical being that was utilized, and the etheric entity within was known as El-Khadir, or the green one. Understood? And that combination helped us to deal with the religious degrees, understood? And up until 1996, with the coming of a book called The Holy Tablets, which was the bridge between religion and reality. So that book will be updated once again, but it was the bridge to help us, as I say, dealing with all the stories of the religious degrees, where they came from, their origin, so on and so forth, and then to prepare us, as I say, for the reality of who we are and the real information, because a lot of people have taken our stories, rewritten them in their own culture, changed names, places, dates, times, etc., and it's caused a lot of confusion, wars on the planet, different things, etc., from poor translations, none of which in most of these stories that have been given have been proven factually even to exist. So before you even ask about what colours Jesus, you need to prove that he exists first. You understand? So none of those things proven, yet cultures on the planet, you understand, races on the planet having cultures which are much older than the 6,000 years of monotheism, and we seem to be able to find bones of people who existed, buildings that they built, evidence, hard evidence of this culture, but yet when it comes to monotheism, we don't seem to be able to find these things, interesting enough. So once that was dealt with, a new combination was necessary in the form of the physical structure being known as Dr Malachi Z and the etheric entity within known as Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. Now, that may sound fantastical, and I'm sure it does sound fantastical. So you judge a tree by the fruit it bears. So you need to look at the works and see whether or not, let's say to you yourself as an individual, whether or not these claims being made are true. So judge it by the doctrine that you see. A lot of people like to push it on the physical person, on a man, etc., etc. And as he would say himself, which applies to all of us really, don't make me holy so you can find holes in me. So we have a habit, certainly of a race of people of letting the Mukasu or the Caucasians get away with absolute murder, literally, absolute murder, never questioning many of the things that they've claimed, stated, etc. But when it comes to our people, sneeze the wrong way, and they want to take you out of your position. So this is how we have been trained, as I say, to move, is to question our own, but never question and hold to account anybody else. And this is all part of the spell. I'm not saying don't question, you should question everybody. Don't just question those who tell you to question everybody. If you're truly going to be, put down belief and blind faith and replace it with facts, and replacing faith with taking back control of your fate. Yes, F-A-T-E. So this is what we're seeking to do. The best thing our ancestors have advised us to do is to remind others of these actual facts, as this is why you find us today in several sessions and different things around the world of different people seeking to spread this doctrine around the world to give our people a fair chance, a fair opportunity to become what they are supposed to be in nature and not what they've taught, i.e. the nuclear family, 2.x children, such and such and so on and so forth, or all these things about success, how they've been defined, have all really come, certainly for us in the West, from television and different other forms of media, or religions which they've been given to, all within the multiple choice of options which have been presented to us, and then we've picked out of those, never really having a proper idea of, what were those Sans people who are, I think scientifically at least, are considered to be the first people on the planet today in South Africa. What was their original doctrine that they were taught in order for them to connect with natural nature before man has come along and given his own interpretation of what the divine is, or how we're supposed to interpret our connection with the environment, as I say, around us as part of that. Okay, so let's get into what we've got to talk about today. Are there any questions?
Yes, there is a question for, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Atafet. And the question is, I wanted to know about bloodlines. For instance, 1, if I'm O positive blood type and I make my transition and happen to reincarnate, will I come back as O positive or another blood type? 2, bloodline, blood type. Is it one and the same? So that's 2 questions in one there.
Okay, interesting question. Trying to think which book best to refer you to. I would probably advise you to seek out a book referred to as The Harvest, which does deal with bloodlines, and another book referred to as The Proverbs of Yaanuwn, which also deals with bloodlines. When you talk about reincarnating back again, that really has nothing to do with how you left. So I suppose if you were O positive and died O positive, and you chose or were, had to come back for a plethora of reasons, that would have nothing to do with your physical structure of how you left. So remember, when you leave your physical structure, you are leaving that physical structure behind, blood type, so on and so forth, and you are becoming an etheric being once again, isn't it? So you're your aspect of you, you are your ka'a, the spiritual aspect of you, and then you are your ba'ah, your soul, if you've retained it. So those three in combination have nothing to do with genes or blood types and so on. There's no gene discussion when we're talking about energy in that regard. Obviously, you have an etheric connection to your family. So when one talks about reincarnating, you're going to come back through your same bloodline as you've described it as. Now that has to do with who your parents are, which will determine whether, and their ancestry, which will determine whether or not you are come back as O positive or not. It doesn't have anything to do with what you were or how you left. It's to do with the blood types of your parents. So as I seek out the harvest, I think we did a class on this as well previously, so you might want to check that out. We've gone through that in some detail. So it doesn't have anything to do with, if that's your question, it doesn't have anything to do with the etheric in that sense. It has to do with who your parents are when you come back through, and really how the genetics of your family in terms of those combination of the 30 people, as I say, what choices have been made or who they have mixed with, which will determine, as I say, the blood type that you come through as. And as I say, predominantly one needs to look at their parents, because their parents is why they are a certain blood type, at least up into 4 generations, if you do some research on that. So what was the second part of the question? I'm not sure if I answered that, the second part.
The second part of the question was bloodline, blood type. Is it one and the same?
So when you're using the term bloodline, I'm assuming to say genealogy. So they are different. So clearly your genetics or genes. Remember, when a person is born, they are effectively 1/3 of their mother, 1/3 of their father, and then the combination of that makes a new you. So if you were to align it with numbers, you say the mother is 1, the father is 3, and the combination of them makes 5. Understood? So they create a new you in that coming together or combination. That is the original or true trinity, which religion has got mixed up. It relates to you being born as your parents. So your genes or your genealogy that you then inherit. So you are a person, correct? You inherit the genealogy of your father and your mother up to 4 generations, and effectively that makes up you. So that is different to your blood type. Obviously within your blood, the reason why I say bloodline is because the DNA and the RNA is being carried around, I suppose, by the blood, or one can analyze one's blood and then look at the DNA and RNA within the cells, but that equally is not just blood, it could be liquid, etc., and things of that nature. In that regard. So why they use bloodline as opposed to other words in relation to that is because, as I say, looking at a person's blood type, you can analyze, okay, well, you can tell by your blood type what your mother was or what your father was. So you analyzing one's blood, it can be one of the ways, isn't it? Because you'll be able to, it's one of the liquids where you're able to analyze a person's DNA. Equally, one could do that with saliva. They could do that with other liquids that the body produces in order to identify that our historical, understand, yeah, as opposed to saying historical information about the person. So there are 2 different things. Any other questions?
There are no other questions.
Okay, let's get to where we were. So we've jumped around with a lot of different subjects, all relate into this class. So I suppose ultimately you want to get a copy of the book, if you're minded to really analyze some of the subjects around it. So we tend to leave a lot on the table. So we deal with a lot of the subjects around it, or maybe explore a certain path within the book, so that people get an understanding of the subject matter. So we have jumped around a little bit. So I think last week we went into some detail. So last week, a couple of weeks ago, whenever the class was, we went into the mind's eye in some detail. So Partarak, and the book directs us down that particular pathway. And so that's why we spent some time in detail on that. We're now going to look at Partarak the Ghost, so walk through that. Now, I would love to go through the whole thing. I think it's exceptionally useful piece of doctrine for us in this day and time, but I'm not sure we're going to get everything finished. So I'm going to move from here and then cover the subject to deal with the bones and collagen and different things of that nature, and deal with the ghost in part. If we don't get through all of that today, then also if we have time, then we can revisit back to it. And if not, then it may be a class of its own. It's that detailed, and I think that's important. But we have kind of covered it. It's just giving you confirmation, showing that it's in different places in our doctrine. Okay, so let's walk through this. Some of you may be familiar with this, some maybe not so. And any sort of terminology, I can see the price of the book in the corner, very funny. Anything that needs upgrading, I'm going to change the terminology and update it as I feel to, so it may not match what's on the screen. Okay, so revelations to the Sabians updated now. Partarak, the way, Tayaf, the ghost. It says, 1, Likum, my beloved, Musbatu Yasar, jewels of my eyes. 2, you must know what Ka'ah, spirit, is to you. 3, what Achach, ether, is. What Noir, fire, is. What a Tayaf, ghost, is. And the birth of Mubras, the leper, by their spirit forces at their 6 month of gestation period in the Caucasoid's womb. Understood? So clearly there are a number of stages, and let me see if might be useful to put a picture up if I can find it. Like that. So we can see that from conception, we have a number of different transformational stages. Understood? Which clearly are there by design, and also allude to different creatures that may or may not, in some instances, have had some influence in, how our physical structure, which is built around the energy aspect of ourselves, is then structured to allow us to exist on this particular planet. So it's a very tailored process that has to happen. And obviously the sacred feminine, i.e. the black woman, has that formula or matrix in her womb, isn't it? So the word matrix, if you look it up, it actually means womb. And so that formula for life here that basically allows somebody to exist here physically, they go through the womb of a woman, or certainly need to utilize those genes if they're going to manipulate that process to create a structure that the energy, spirit being or whatever can exist within the physical. So here we can see where certain points are key. Understood? So gender assignment in this instance, whether a person's going to be male, female, or could be hermaphrodite, or where defects can occur, where it lead into trans, or somebody being same sex, etc., which are nothing to do with any kind of religious punishment and things of that nature. It's to do with chemical imbalances that arise in the birthing process, particularly induced by stress. This is why, because I think technology has made having a baby, certainly in the West, a lot easier. It doesn't mean that it's not a careful carefully and a sacred process insofar as it needs to be treated with significant care. So if the mother is stressed out during the pregnancy, it can result in changes to what maybe that original design was supposed to be. So male and female is very simple. It's a case of if the man had more zinc in his body than iron, he's going to produce a male child. If he had more iron in his body at the time of ejaculation that led to conception than zinc, then he's going to produce a female child. Understood? Now, in rarer instances, we get hermaphrodites and hermaphrodites who are basically truly neutral gender, but all of these comes out of female gender. So female gender gives birth to male gender, and it gives birth to neutral gender beings, baphanoid. This is not something that somebody decides in their head. I feel like I'm neutral gender. This is some natural process where somebody is born that way, really determined in the 5th week of the birthing process. A very unique set of individuals, certainly celebrated in our culture. And so we don't judge based on what happens in people's bedrooms. However, we can talk about certain same-sex individuals, gay, lesbian, these different types of things. And that has happened as a result of a defect. Nothing to do with religious judgment, it's to do with the mother being stressed out here during the pregnancy, and then something's gone wrong in the birthing process. Now, if a person's born that way, it is what it is, and whatever choices they make, that is natural. Same as somebody being born with bad eyesight, or, you understand, they've got difficulty using their arm, or they're born, with certain defects or whatever. We have to learn to live with it. It is what it is. Is it natural? Yes, it is natural. But it just means, it's not gone perfectly. And that's really because human beings still today lack proper understanding of the birthing process and how it goes, because no one ever taught them. And so if we're constrained by Mukasu teachings, then it's only to be what their discovery is. Do you understand? You've got to understand that not all people on the planet have the same knowledge journey. We started off knowing, and then as a people, the Nagaru people, we started off knowing, understand, being in a perfect state, as a friend of mine, Hotep Y, used to say, we went from building pyramids to building spliffs. So we obviously started from a point where we knew and were fully integrated and aligned with our own ancestry, and now we find ourselves in ignorance, as opposed to the Caucasian who was in ignorance. You look at their history, Dark Ages, so on and so forth, on all fours, eating people and animals in the mountains, etc. And now they're launching satellites into space. So the reality of the situation, not everybody moves around the circle of existence in the same direction. Understood? So you have to understand these things. And now today, we're not necessarily the authority that we once were. And so the authority of information today is them. And so you can be constrained by what their knowledge is, or what they choose to share. Understood? And so this is why you get these kind of conflicts. So in this regard, we see here importantly that in the 6-month consciousness is brought into active work. So the baby there knows that they're alive, so to speak. And we're going to see what happens in the Mukasu or Caucasian part of that journey. Okay, so let's jump back to where we were. Okay, so let's go from verse 3. So what a Chak is, and what Nawar fire is, and what a Tayaf ghost is, and the birth of the Pa Mubras, the leper, by the spirit forces at the 9th month of the gestation period in the Caucasoid's womb. 4. And when the Koriganis enters their bodies as sparks of fire, or little Ka'ah spirit beings called fairies. 5. Fairies, Koriganis, fair-skinned, colorless, white, transparent fire beings enter the womb of the Kukasu or Mukasu Caucasoid at the 6th month. 6, fair, blonde, fairish, white, pale, snow white. These are the root of their spirit forces. They call their mother, their fairy God mother. Remember, we talked about this last week, making that point. Remember, Gad, the 7th son of Jacob in their Bible. God and God. It's the same phonetic word. Understood? 7, fairy, a small elemental being with white magic power. Fairies outside their homes. They put a fairy light or lamp of fire, outdoor illumination. Their heaven is a fairyland. Their religions are fairy tales. Their angels are fairies. Understood? So what we've been showing you in these classes, at least, is that a monotheistic religion is a watered-down version, remember, of these Celtic, the Celtic religion. You understand? Celtic religion. It's a watered-down version. I think we've done a job really to show you what really sits behind it. The monotheistic religion is the watered-down version of the Druids and these different types of Celtic cultural aspects, because that's who they are. You understand? All of the names applied today are tribal names to hide the real bloodlines of these individuals. Remember, we change our name as a form of protection. They change their names to hide their true, in a lot of instances, demonic bloodlines. Now, 8. So what and how does an incarnation take place of these fairies? As you read in their Bible, Acts chapter 2, verses 2-4, their Holy Ghost, was in fact fire, as in James 3:6. No, as devils, they believe, James 2:9, and they are cursed and playing deity, James 3:9. 9, according to ancient records, a ka'a, spirit being, can be wawed, good, or dawe, evil. 10, yet are conscious gases that can produce spirit gases from daman blood or maye water in order to emanate. So when you talk about conscious gases, remember, conscious, that means aware, awake. So these are beings in that form. There's intelligence there, there's decision making, etc. That's what it's meant by conscious, and produces spirit gases from the blood or water in order to emanate. So they produce a force. One of those forces we describe, at least in our doctrine, is referred to as 6 ether. You understand? It can cause people to become angry. They can cause people to make decisions that make them intoxicated, opening them up to being incarnated. Understood? So these things, adrenaline and other things that can be produced from the body, obviously carried around by the blood, lead to, or can lead to, depending on the person's decision making, open them up, as I say, to allow or people to be, when I say opened up, allow them to be taken control of by these forces, so they can produce more of the same gases that empower these conscious forces. So 6 ether causes things to decay and die, and so there are forces that subsist off of that energy, and therefore, as we touched upon in the last class, set things up to allow, as I say, those gases, etc., to be produced, and 6 evil forces then to be empowered by the same. So 11. Also, the physical incarnate beings were called gnomes, goblins, gibbons, gibbors, and demigods, are forms of a fairy that lived underground in caves, also called Dawani or Dawani. 12, the Celtics called their own incarnations leprechauns, Irish fairy or brownie, to cover up the greys, and they say little men. Important verse here in number 12, because it's showing you here. We dealt with mind's eye, remember last week, class, some detail. Ain't seen that, go check it out or read the book. So that's showing you here, even though these terminologies are being used in their various different stories, there are extraterrestrials behind that. Yes, the same way today, angels and other types of life forms have all these stories connected around them. God, Lord God, etc., Almighty, all these different terminologies being used, but sitting behind the fairy tale is a group of extraterrestrials who have manipulated human beings, at least, or mankind very specifically as well, in order to use them for their own purposes and own agenda. Hence why in Job 9:9, we have certain star constellations mentioned. There's 100 million suns in the Milky Way galaxy alone, one of the smallest galaxies, yet there's only 3 there mentioned, or several mentioned out of that, because the beings who are manipulating the book come from there. Understood? And so this is showing you a lot of these stories behind it, or sitting behind it, excuse me, is some extraterrestrial intervention, or the reality is it's dealing with extraterrestrials at the source of not only causing some of the myths, but exploiting the purpose of what they want those individuals or people to do. 13, so they could emanate or issue from Tayaf, gas or spirit, and take form. 14, in Afafreye Ka'au, Africa, Parkakasu, the Caucasoids who saw Ba'ah Ibis, Bes, and Pata, Ta, called them pygmy. And in Yarapat, Europe, they have Kakasu, Caucasoids, as pygmy, or pygmy, Homo porcine. Yeah, porcine, pig, hog, boar, swine. We do some research, you'll find out that each of the different races have what they are referring to as pygmies. Understood? In Africa, this is what they call the little people. Now, this is different to what a dwarf is. So a dwarf, if you understand, I'll do some research, may have a enlarged head, a shortened body, maybe small limbs, etc. Everything is not in proportion. When you're talking about little people, and when you say little people, they're not really little people. They're little to us, but actually that is human beings' proper height. So 4'5" for females, 5'4" for males. Yeah, so we've always been small as a people. We are their evolutionary descendants. Understood? And basically the perfect height for a man. I know obviously there's this thing about women loving tall men or whatever, etc. But perfect height for men is 5'7". Understood? Between the little people and now the taller, obviously, descendancy that we had that got mixed in. So the right balance between the two, it's around 5'7", irrespective of what TV tells us, etc. And remember, which we get into a bit later, everything to do with the physical body is to deal with maths, and the maths needs to be correct to attune us into the environment and optimize us for taking what is known as outformation and transforming it into information. Yeah, the maths and the size of the body, etc. All of these things are critical to the optimization of that. Understood? And so absolutely within natural nature, there are certain formulas, and the maths or the alchemy, maths came out of alchemy, is an important part of that. So they were designed to be that size for a very good rationale or reasoning. So little people, the difference between that and dwarf is that everything is perfectly proportioned. It's not some enlarged head, short body. Everything is perfectly proportioned. We came from that, as I say, as the Sands people. Pygmy is a nickname, would be described as, and so the Sands people today are those people. And so they are small in comparison to what human beings are, because clearly other beings have come in with height and have mixed in. And so that has led to human beings being taller than what they were originally created to be. So here again, focus that you had, as I say, have pygmies in different races, as they would call them, or little people of different races. And this is what we're reading about now. So, but their pygmy is tied into the Homo porcine. And 15, being that they were using pig body parts, as they do today, for transplants after wars. And today, the Caucasoid skin and blood is the same as a pig. If a person will eat pig, they will eat a human being. Let me say that again. If a person will eat pig, they will eat a human being. Yeah, so a lot of the time, remember, and we were talking about this, I think, a few classes ago, we find that, pork is put in everything. Yeah, because it's giving you that, the feel or flavor or seasoning of what they are, because they were created to be food for their gods. Yeah, so by getting us to eat it, and as I say, our ancestors, again, we touched on this last time, made it a joke for us to eat watermelon. And we didn't realize that in eating watermelon, it was actually flushing our system of the strychnia worm, or parasite that you find within pork. It's not a naturally created animal there, and was created obviously for a certain reason, which you're going to go on to read about. But this is what you're dealing with eating of pork, which is one in the early days. We were told not to eat it. You understand? Remember the old True Light pamphlet said, "Are you still eating pork?" So, you understand? Are you still eating it? Out of everything you read, you're still eating it, and taught you about its origins, and where it came from, etc., etc. So obviously, our bodies, or those original Sands people, were herbivorous. Obviously, we have mutated over the years and will be considered to be omnivorous. And if you still eat meat or have to eat meat, you understand, then there are certain ones, certainly white meat, that we would tend to eat as them being cleaner. We certainly don't eat red meat, but certain meats are being cleaner than others. Or, you understand, if you're transitioning to a plant-based diet, then you need to do that, let's say, with knowledge and under control, and allow your body the time to adjust to that if that's what you choose to do. But if you are going to keep eating meat, and there's certain ones to eat and other ones to stay away from. Pig or pork being one of those. Remember, in their religious story, they followed the laws, isn't it, of the Torah, 613 of them. And so they followed those laws. And then they've made this, let's say, excuse when Paul came along and said those laws didn't matter, where Jesus didn't say that. And so I think it's Matthew chapter 5. In there, is it verse 17 or chapter 5, one of those. But in chapter 5, said the law stands until heaven and earth passes away. Well, heaven and earth hasn't passed away, so they should still be following those same laws if they claim to be following their Jesus. But Paul gave them a little bit of a get out and say, well, it's all about the spirit. And so therefore you can do what you want, basically, in terms of food-wise. Yeah, send them down a certain path, at least, to be food, more tastier food for their gods. Yeah, so pork is what does that. Now, here it says 16, the pig was made by crafting the canine, the feline, and the rodent used to clean up the filth in the caves of Yarapat, Europe. Being that they did not know how to bury or burn their dead, they left their bodies for flesh eaters and scavengers to feed on. 17, the evil pygmies of Yarapat, Europe, also called goblin, were mischievous, ugly demons, later called protectors of Parnabat, the gold. The Celtic clans would steal from Afaf Rayeka, Africa. So again, you understand, you think about these little people, leprechauns, isn't it? I can't remember all the myth, but on these rainbows, and at the rainbow you find this pot of gold. It's all tying back into the real event stories, not even stories, but the real events of people who understand what exactly was taking place and how different extraterrestrials, as I say, were coming here and seeking to establish a genealogy on the planet, or, as I say, interested legally, I say, in line with the permission of the Galactic Federation, or illegally going against that to establish a genealogy here and take advantage of the natural resources of this planet and people they consider to be a resource. 18. Goblins, pygmies, dwarfs, gnomes, midgets, leprechauns were all the same, with the same orbs or winged fairies as their angelic host. Ghost or spectre of their ancestors who are dead. 19, they follow their living as white balls of light called orbs or spirit ghosts who enter them at random. 20, it's also called demon or devil possession. So just going back, when you're looking at 18, important point again here, remember there is no difference to when you're watching Peter Pan and when you're reading the Bible. Yeah, when you're looking at those Disney stories and different things or whatever, one will be considered to be mythology. But the question you have to ask yourself, what makes monotheism not mythology? Because it's just a different design of the same creatures. A different design. Yeah, what's the difference between a fairy and an angel? What's the difference? Size. Size is the difference. Are both been proven to be correct or exist? No, only in the mind's eye of what people claim that they have seen, which we went through in the last class, what people claim they've seen from stories that they've read or been told. And as I say, when you look in his story, you see that the problems occur when art masquerades as being factual. Art, i.e. what's in somebody's mind, their imagination, and they put it on paper or the canvas when it comes to painting or any other structure. Now that's through television, movies, and so on and so forth. So when art masquerades as fact, it is proving itself to be detrimental for human development. And the only difference is that the person, at least in their mind, knows that Peter Pan, at least the adults do, the children, it could be argued differently, but the adults know Peter Pan is not real or don't consider it to be real. Even if they engage in the thing, go to the theme parks, go to the plays, you understand, dress up like it or whatever the case may be, they understand it's not real. That's not the same for this monotheistic teachings that have never been questioned, never been held account. And when the questions come, overstood is a problem. Or if you are the questioner with the mindset to question, is a problem. Or if you question at least from a point of into overstanding, like the master did for many years, then you're not only a problem, you're a threat. Yeah, and they will take you out in that regard. Yeah, because it's more beneficial to keep people in ignorance of the real plan that's going on. So remember, go and look up the word God in etymology. Go and look up the word God, G-O-D, in etymology. Yeah, it means to invoke, to become possessed. We've been unpicking what this society is really set up to do in the West. Yeah, what it is set up to do. And if we follow after them, which obviously we found ourselves in this interesting but deadly predicament, is that we've been raised in this society. There wasn't a proper alternative presented to us until we encountered Wu-Sabat that didn't have the hallmarks in it of the existing system, because all of the religions, even the black ones that are considered to be black, are within the scope of calling upon the names of these deities, whether it's Allah, Yahweh, etc. You understand? It's just they've got a black version of it for those who are interested in that type of things. And getting our people to let it go is one of the greatest challenges that the master teacher and other teachers who are part of the plan of raising our awareness and our intellect to prepare us for the day and time we're in now, are obviously have had to face. Yeah, but you're now in a time of actual facts. New spirituality in this day and time is factual information, and all things must be uncovered now. So a person really has no excuses as to where they want their path to follow. You understand? And at a certain point, you can't ride two horses at the same time. You got to ride, you understand? Or as they say, serve two masters. You got to decide, are you 9 ether or are you 6 ether? You understand? And which one it is. That's a challenge for everybody. Hence why it's important to create the right environments that perpetuate the right type of growth. You understand that 24% of your DNA is in a transient state, and so it's affected by the environment. Yeah, so one of the things why we find it challenging for our transformation is because our environment's not right. Yeah, we're supposed to be tribe, we're supposed to be living together, etc., which is one of the reasons why they want to destroy and get hold of Tamaray. Yeah, 476 acres that we had in Georgia there, because it was an environment that was conducive to our growth and transformation. But whenever you're doing, or you see a group of positive people doing their thing, what does it attract? Yes, it attracts devils, demons, you understand? Those who want to go against natural nature. And that's even within our own genes, let's be honest. Yeah, where we have that self-destructive element. So you have to understand when the good are, there's going to be, as they call it, bad also, which is why in ancient Egypt, they didn't have prisons. They just say, okay, you don't want to live positively and in and around, and depending on the type of crime, you understand, that was going against the environment, you say, you go and live over there with the, with the murderers and the killers and whoever else who put you out. Understood? So that was there. So that's why there's no prisons. They don't find no prison there. So you want to stay in heaven, you need to act in the positive ways conducive to the environment, i.e. natural nature. Now, let's continue. Any questions? Sorry, before I go on.
Yes, there is a question from Hatshepsut. In my career, I have come across only one black female that had both sex organs. She was a wife and mother. Was this a gatekeeper?
So when a person has both genitalia, that is a defect. When they talk about proper hermaphrodites and proper hermaphrodites, they have the energy of both genders within them, i.e. when you look at the makeup of their DNA, they will have, so for example, they may have an XYX configuration. So they'll have an extra set of genes really within the nuclei. So they're more, that's why they have more energy, you understand, as we would classify as. So they have more energy. 2 genitalia is a defect, and usually they may, I don't know, surgeon or whatever, or doctors may try to, if possible, to either choose one or the other for them. Understand, if possible, like in the case of Sierra, the R&B singer, she was born with both genitalia, and they made her female. You understand? Now, that doesn't mean that she may not have some of those qualities, but 2 genitalia is a defect. Yeah, it's not something's gone slightly wrong there. If you're talking about the gatekeepers that we are talking about, they have the energy of 2 gender because they have additional chromosomes. Now, book to refer to is Thahuti's vision, actual fact, Thahuti's vision, and that goes into that and gives you the 7 different gender types that were created as part of at least this strand of existence. Any other questions?
No other questions.
Okay, so 19. So they follow their living as white balls of light called orbs or spirit ghosts who enter them at random. 20 is called demon or devil possession. 21, they call these spirit forces familiar spirits in their Bible, dead family, ghosts linked to them, familiar spirits, lineage. Yeah, Leviticus 2:6, verses 19. Chapter 19 and verse 31 also. So that word familiar spirit is saying family spirits. Yeah, family spirit. You see in witchcraft, or say depictions of witchcraft. You look at certain horror movies, etc. Remember, you saw the familiar. So like in the Omen movies, for example, you saw the familiar or the family spirit attached to the person, correct? Yeah, as I think it was in one, it was a Rottweiler, if you remember, yeah. And in Omen 2, it was a crow, yes. And then I think in the third one, they went back to the Rottweiler again. So the family spirit clearly is they're linked, which is why they put dogs in, or like they have dogs in the house because they're family, and the dogs obviously having a sensory perception which is wider than the normal human being, but also can be used there to in-house certain spirit forces. So this is why I say, well, yeah, we didn't have dogs in the house per se. I'm saying we utilized them for certain rituals because a dog can a dog can detect these spirit forces in and around because they're vibrating outside of the normal vision range of a human being, isn't it? Which is 400 to 700 nanometers. Yeah, so they're vibrating outside of that, so you can't see them. Whereas dogs can detect them. So they were used in death rituals to let you know or make us aware that there's these forces there waiting to take advantage of the dead body, etc., or decaying body, etc. So we were very clear in our rituals about protecting our dead from their body or the energy within the body being utilized by forces that would seek to feed off of it. So we use it in that context. Whereas their ancestors are in housing these various different creatures, so they're around them. Do you understand what I'm saying? Hence why this the master teacher explained, obviously they're encouraging people now to have this. So at one time, let's be honest, I'm not saying black people didn't have dogs, but they certainly wasn't as close to them as they are now. When I went to Ghana, the dog lived, for example, my uncle's dog, as a security mechanism, he lived under the car. Understood? And he wasn't allowed in the house. There wasn't even a discussion about that. And he didn't have his own food either. He ate rice and meat, etc. What my uncle ate. So they ate the same thing. He didn't have his own, understand, canned food and etc. So there's in different cultures around the world. They treat animals or pets differently. Understood? Whereas in this country, the UK, the dogs have got names like Ian, John, Paul. You understand? They got names like human beings have got names, yeah. And they even got clothes and different things of that nature, which is going off the topic slightly. But what was being said spiritually was when you have a dog in your house, remember, it allows the dog to watch you for them. Yeah, the dog is watching you for them. Yeah, the spiritual. What's that thing in Amazon? What's the thing called? I don't remember the name of it now. Yeah, the thing that they put in your house. What's the name of it? Anybody help me out? Emma, what's it called? The Amazon thing that you put in your house. I can't remember the name of it. I haven't got one.
Alexa.
There you go. You understand? A spiritual Alexa. That's what the dog is. So, and certain other animals, etc., that are in the home where they should be outside. Let's be honest. You understand? If they needed a home, nature surely would have given them the ability to build it for themselves. Yeah, dogs can't build houses. You understand? Nor can they build beds, etc. So, if they had the ability to do so, I'm sure they would have been given a working thumb in nature, which is one of the things that separates human beings from animals, is having a working thumb. Now, and other people do build homes for themselves, don't they? Spiders, birds, etc. They build homes for themselves, correct? So, 21. They are called spirit forces, familiar spirits in their Bible, dead family, ghosts linked to them, familiar spirits lineage, Leviticus chapter 2, verses 6 and chapter 19, verse 31. 22, their disembodied dead relatives seek to feed off of your fear, fright, and terror. Yeah, let's go back to maybe part 1 or 2 of this class. We go into that in great detail. 23. In Wiccan white magic, they even raise their dead who are too weak to materialize on their own. As you read in their Bible, 1 Kings 17:20 and 1 Samuel 27:13. So, interesting enough, I think we keep saying this in the previous class, go back, but remember, we talked about this bloodletting, or this issue about people having to let blood, which empowers these forces. So it's showing you that even within the blood, here in chapter 10, that these forces are sitting there, isn't it, within the blood, and they can empower these discarnate entities. Understood? Which is why in certain rituals, I think one of the ones we talked about was the Shia in the Islamic degree, where obviously they start bloodletting, in a ritual basically that is used in the remembrance of their ancestors being killed by the descendants of Abu Bakr. Understood? Yeah. And so that bloodletting is in remembrance to that. But the ritual, however well-intentioned they consider it to be in remembrance of their wiping out of their ancestral line, is empowering these 6 Ether forces through that bloodletting. So in your own time, look up these quotes. As I say, they are going to give you better understanding of what's going on. 24. Kashafi witches, as they are called today, Wakanu Wiccan sorcery, with witchcraft or sorcery, pharmakia, found in Strong's 5333, Revelations chapter 1-2, 18-23, Exodus 22:18. As you can see, the word pharmakia is the same word pharmacy. Yeah, so pharmaceutical products, that's where it comes from. You understand? Now, some of these products have proven themselves to be highly detrimental to us as Nagaru because they've not been tested on our DNA. They've been tested on Mokasu DNA. And so this is what we find ourselves in, hence why you need to create doctors or whatever people in that industry who at least are there making things with understanding of Nagaru physiology. Understood? That's why it can be detrimental. But obviously you find yourself in a situation where we're in a reactive state a lot of the time. You can do obviously your proactive stuff, but sometimes you might get sick, find yourself in a reactive situation. And remember, they constrain a lot of even natural remedies. So we touched upon previously, they constrain a lot of that. So because it doesn't work for them in the same type of way. And so this is why you see that we need our own stuff, our own environment, our own sovereignty in order to deal with or perfect at least those type of medicines that are more naturally that occur in nature. Understand now? Obviously, there are some medicines and things that seek to replicate that in an artificial sense, but sometimes you have to look at the mindset behind some of these cures, which give you obviously a lot of side effects. Doesn't mean not to take them if you need them, but obviously you need to be mindful of what you're taking. Your eyes are open now, so do your research and find out what works best for your body. 25. There are and were also Kukasu women who learned how to use their bodies and beauty and formulas or potions and would trap specters, spirits, and use them to do their wishes. 26. Mostly male spirits, which became known as witches or witch, kashaf. 27. Witch is from the Old English Wicca, sorcery, and their religion became Wiccanism. Priest were vicar, Latin meaning a change. Pastors, bishops, ministers, rabbi, kohen, sheikh, imam. So all the same, all from the same source, in this in monotheism religion, all connected. Look up the word and do your research on that. Look up this word here, priest, in etymology, and see what it really means. You'll be surprised. Now, 28, all subscribe to the same Celtic clansmen and those women who could trap them once dead and use their spirit to do their will. In the Islamic religion is the genie in a lamp or bottle. Same trap specters that do their will and in time turn on them. 29, or once they die, comes to reverse their use by taking the witch as their slave. 30, so yes, people living can trap spirits dead to use for their will. 31, their male spirits, wazaru, warlocks, wizards, their priests called Druids. 32, these are your Satanists and their new religion names to cover their old religion, Wiccanism. 33, they use new names and titles to hide who they are really, are the knights of the Celtic clans, Luciferians who live by the rules and regulations of Lawi-Tananu, Leviathan, Levites of Tanin, of Tain, or Tanin, means serpent, understand, or reptile. 34, they took over others' lands, renamed them, and now call them countries. 35, they mix with others, bred hybrids of subraces, now called by names. Some say they're Arabians, others Iraqi, Iranians, Syrians, Egyptians, Libyans, Tunisians, Algerians, Moroccans, Yemenis, Jordanians, Palestinians, Israeli, Lebanese, and Turks, and most of those in the cover of the religion now called Al-Islam or Islamism. 36, they are called Muslims, yet it's the same old religion under a new name. 37, Islamism of Mesopotamians from Sumeria, or it's called Judaism. Same old religion, or it's called Christianity, and its many subsects. Same old religion of ghost worship, spirit worship, offering blood sacrifices, flesh offerings, burnt offerings to the same El Shaddai, Hashem, Yahweh, Rab, El, Allah, Theos, Dios, Rut, Gad, God, or God. 38, one of many as Elohim, Alihat, Theo, and gods. 39, the cherub, Ezekiel 28:14, cherubim of Genesis 3:22-24, fallen angel beings from Kama'at, Pleiades, Job 38:31. 40 is Kama'u Pleiadian, who can shapeshift, transfigure, and come as spirit forces like little white orbs or ghost apparitions. Fire orbs take on human form, angelic form, a grey form, or a relative's image if they have lost their soul or reside in animals, mostly canines, felines, even objects, as Sawatat, voices. So again, you see here all of the mythology, but sitting behind it is a group of extraterrestrials, like he was reading about in verse 12. Yeah, the Pleiadians coming in these forms to take advantage and control of these individuals, and as I say, feeding these six ether or death or forces that cause things to decay within the natural environment. 40, it is easy to enter into an intoxicated person on drugs, a drunk person on alcohol, a bleeding person, a sick person, diseased or angry person. 42, those who open up to them are the old religions, or those who did in sacerdotal rituals of sorcery. So sacerdotal is basically saying priestly rituals, which I'll say, look up the word priest and in combination with sacerdotal, and you'll see it's dealing with preparing individuals for sacrifice. Now, witchcraft or blood sacrifices. 43, they can walk into an open person and take over their chat body. 44, they are the Holy Ghost that possesses people in Holy Church and Pentecostal who practice Santeria and others. So remember, Holy Ghost doesn't mean good. It means pure ghost. That's what it's saying there. Holy, yeah, it means pure. Doesn't mean good. 45, the Caucasus Caucasians who hunt Tayafat ghosts always say the orbs, they see little white balls of light, white light, spirit fire, as they read in their Bible, Acts chapter 2:22, Matthew chapter 3:14, not to be mistaken for crystal orbs. 46, if the orbs are always white lights or fire, Why do white people call them dark spirits and not what they see? White spirits, mist, vapor, or gas. They are white spirit orbs, not black or crystal. 47, it's white evil, white magic sorcery, Greek 5331 for the word pharmakia. Revelations chapter 1 to 2, 1823, witchcraftism, wiccanism from Celtics, and Celtics, not Africans. 48, many Kakasu or Mukasu, Caucasian females complain of being sexually raped by a ghost. These again are their own succubi as female specters and incubi as male specters. So this succubi and incubi, remember that that combination of the spiritual aspect. Remember that in the designer genes, which is a combination of the Anunnaki, Pleiadian, and the Simian gene, creating the designer gene used in the Mukasu's making, has led to, remember, as opposed to when you think about in Project 24, where you had male DNA from Masa'a, Sabat, Nadam, so from the Orion star constellation versus Sabat, Nadam in the Sirius star constellation, which female DNA came from. In that, remember, they were programmed with 24 skills. You understand? Yeah, it's a set of skills: sewing, you understand, cooking, construction, other different types of things. So skills were inbred in the genes. This is different when Mukasu came along to the designer gene, which then led to obsessive behaviors understood from those skills. You understand? And so oversexed is the succubi in females and then incubi in males. Hence, you find those type of characteristics in the porn industry. Understood? That's what those are. Those spirit forces sitting behind that are these particular aspects of Spectre, as you're reading about in 48. 49, they own their dead, ghost, ghouls, spectres, and demons. Designer genes, I think DUF 1220, I think it's referred to as designer genes. Now, 50, they spend millions of dollars looking for the dead on programs each day, such as Ghost Adventure, My Ghost Story, The Hunted, Most Scary Places, Most Haunted Places, Taps, Destination Truth. Many thousands of ghosts, dead, monster vampires, Lacanu werewolves are on cinemas or TV. You name it, they open contact for the other side with the white arts. 51, in their churches, they have doctrines on exorcising the devils, demons, the dead, exorcism, exorcists in their Bibles. The book of Exodus means departure. Yet where do the ghosts go? Into or another person. Revelation chapter 18, verse 2. 52, in Matthew chapter 12, verse 26, it is the Kakasu Caucasoids casting out their own dead. 53, really, all they are doing is casting them into this Tapao world from the wormhole they claim to see as the light once they are dead. 54, the white light beckoning them to enter, as well as bring evil satanic Ka'au spirits into this world, in Spiritual Baptist Church, in the Holy Roller, in the Pentecostal churches, through Voodoo and Santeria. Yeah. So remember, we showed you in the previous class the SMAT circle, space, matter, and time. And we showed you that obviously at the top of the circle, remember this was showing an growth within existence, depending on what way around the circle you go through. But the 9, remember the 6, and then the 3, and then the lower cipher beneath that, which was from 3 to 1 to 0, that lower cipher, remember, it is those within the physical world who provide a conduit between the physical and the spiritual world. And so bring them up from the lower cipher or lower circle or Lucifer, bring up those spirit forces, as I say, into physical existence. Understand? As one of the ways, anyway. So, and this is what goes on to explain. It's 55. People invoke Ka'atu spirits into the world of the living, and this is why so much evil exists. 56. They use Nagaru Negroids in their cover religions to bring their spirit forces into the world by singing, dancing, chanting, gospels, and hymns. 57. They know Nagaru Negroids' vibration are at a higher level, so they draw them into the religions to use them as tuning forks, be it Mosesism, Jesusism, or Mohammedism, and of its many forms. 58. Even extraterrestrials appear as many as transparent, coming through walls or ceilings in ghost form to take people with them. And check this out. These Ramadu Greys work for their masters, reptilians. We went through this, I think, 2 parts ago. Go check that out. If important, yes, the truth about reptilians. 10, Nam-U Draconians, who eat the flesh of animals and humanoids. 60, the Ramadu Greys don't have emotions, so they are allowed to drink the liquid life or adrenaline raised from the base of the brain. 61, they drink this fluid and can feel like being intoxicated. 62, the reptilians let them drain this from those taken or abducted. 63, then they boil them, Leviticus 8:31, in big vats to cook the flesh-eating cherubim. Revelation chapter 19, verse 18. 64, people think they are their God or gods. Genesis 18:8, the Lord ate flesh. 65, these beings can shapeshift or metamorphosize. Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 to 8, Mark chapter 9, verses 2 to 8, Luke chapter 9, verses 9 to 29. Strong's 339 for metamorpho, which means to transform, change, transfigure, transform. 66, they take on many pleasing forms to deceive people into thinking they are, well, we're good. That they do in the religious world, just as Jesus with the reptile tongue, a 2-edged sword dripping with blood. Yeah, and a variety of quotes there, look them up. 67, their Jesus is a reptilian. Yeah, those quotes there to do that to people, but those quotes they talk about Jesus with a 2-edged sword. Understood? We know symbolically what that means. Obviously, the ability to speak more than one language. However, when you take the literal interpretation of it, you get the forked tongue of the reptile. Understood? So there, Jesus is a reptilian who, like the vampire, offers them to drink blood to gain eternal life as vampires do. John chapter 6, verse 54 and 56. Hebrews chapter 9, 22, for whites. Revelation chapter 7, 14. 68. So they say, trust in the blood, and as Dracula, you mix with him to receive the gifts of eternal physical life, isn't it? The ghoul is the, in the story, the ghoul or the ghost soul, you understand? The ghoul is seeking, isn't it, for the vampire to induct them to become a vampire, where they now can do, you understand, like a vampire, live forever. But obviously they've got to kill, drink blood, etc., etc. So the ghoul is bringing them food, isn't it, for them to subsist off of, in the hope that at some point the vampire will transform them. And as we said, remember the word vampire is the word V empire or Vulcan empire. And so it's tying into these reptilian civilizations, as I say, who feel no way to take advantage of civilizations for them to service their own needs. Understood? 68. So they say, trust in the blood, and as Dracula, you mix with him and receive gifts of eternal physical life. If you feed off of others. John chapter 6, verse 56 to 54. Dracula is short for dragon, draconians. John chapter 6, verse 63. 69. They look forward to one day being with them when they die. 70. Or as shadow forms or people linked to shadow beings of the dead. Genesis chapter 19, verses 1 to 8. Job chapter 7, verse 2. Job chapter 14, verse 2. Psalms chapter 91, verse 1. Shaddai, Hebrew. Acts chapter 5, verse 15. James chapter 4, verses 1 to 7. All relate to Shaddai, which is the Almighty. Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 17, which is the root from Hebrew, Strong's number 7700 for shad, meaning demon or devil. Yes. In Exodus chapter 6, under Hebrews 7706, El Shaddai, powerful demon. El, power, strength, shad, demon or devil. So this is telling you exactly the forces, obviously, that are sitting behind these titles or names. Understood? This will be really interesting to go into in more detail, but I'm going to step off of this to go to where we are today. Understood? So that's just re-emphasizing that point there of how the system is set up. We obviously looked at mind's eye and part of the ghost to deal with this issue here. So you can see what is really sitting behind these forces. Any questions?
No questions.
No further questions.
Okay, so let's quickly jump to where we're another section, just so we do cover that aspect of the book. I think we touched upon it, but maybe we need to just emphasize that a bit more. If we get time, we'll jump back in the ghost because it's very useful part to rack. So what are the freaks and the perfect creature? We already explained from the very outset of the class, no mystery, that the perfect creature is the sands people in the sand, and the markers, the extraterrestrials who are responsible for their creation and responsible for the creation of the different races on the planet Earth today, why we have different blood types, etc., etc. Because, as I say, different extraterrestrials have come using the same or similar original matrix and then modified it to create beings in their image and after their likeness. Understood? So the perfect creature is the sands people. It has the genetic markers of all of the different races on the planet, but it does not have the bleared eye of the Mukasu or Caucasian. So it has the woolly hair, tight curls, which denote genetic strength of the Nagaru. It has the folded eyelid of the Oriental, has the bridged forehead of the Aborigine, and it has the indented chin, or they have the indented chin of the Dravidian or the Hindus, maybe some refer to them as. Yeah, but they don't have the colorless iris of the Caucasian, a made man, understood, as opposed to naturally occurring by the rules or permission of nature. So what are the freaks? Well, we explained to you previously, and we only touched upon some, but there's so many. Obviously refer to the book for greater detail on that. But what we were saying is there's loads of creatures mentioned in these books. So clearly, as we were just reading about in the Ghost, there's obviously Judaism gave birth to Christianity. Christianity gave birth to Islam. Understood? Now, yes, Judaism does not believe in Christianity because they don't accept Jesus as their particular savior. However, you understand, they do accept Abraham, and all of the different subsequent religions or major religions came after, except Abraham as the father of their nations. Understood? So they're all interlinked. Now, all believe that their book, whatever, you understand, even though they don't have an original of their books, they only have old. Old is not the same as original. Yeah, oldest is not the same as original. So none of them have or can claim to have, may claim to have an original, but the original is not original, it's oldest. So even in their own stories, they don't have the original version of what they claim to be divine. Yeah, and one of the questions you may ask yourself or consider is, well, why hasn't God just sent them down a new version? Click his fingers or give it to a new prophet in this day and time to just give them a new version. He knows that they, in certain religions, it got burned or lost or whatever the case may be. So why not just bring them a new version? Why they got to rely on 1500, translations from 1500 years ago or 1400 years ago? Why they got to rely on inaccurate information? Doesn't God or Allah or Yahweh know that human beings' minds change? They make mistakes. They can interpret things incorrectly. Understood? that modern technology is going to change the perception and meaning of these words? Does their God not know this? So, should human beings deserve to be tricked by poor translation? Is God or Allah not seeing that human beings are going to war over poor translations of books? Yeah, attacks on, I don't know, same sex and different types of people, when the translation, if you go into it, doesn't say what, like Sodom and Gomorrah, for example, it's got nothing to do with the sexual orientation of the people. It's got to do with how many souls that were supposed to be saved. Yeah, go and look it up and read. Yeah, it's not talking about sexual relations in that regard. So God knows this, allegedly, or in the myth of what has been taught about God, God is supposed to know this, but doesn't intervene to stop all of these problems between human beings and these different sects and cultures, etc., from happening. Now, if it's the word of God and it's divine word of God, as you say, yes, if you ask an individual, do they believe in unicorns? Yes, they're going to say no. A unicorn is a mythological creature. Yet we see mythological creatures in the book. So the issue is, are the freaks myths or are they real? You can't get out of it if you say it's the word of God. If it's the word of God or the word of Allah, yeah, unchanged, untampered with, they all these claims that they make, even though there's many, many mistakes in these books, but they claim it's the untampered word of God or it's the untampered word of Allah. Then we're going to look at some of the creatures in there, and the question has to be asked, are they real or not? And that's a question you can ask them, if you're minded to do so. Yes? Now, so in one of the hadiths, it states here that Adam was a 90-foot giant. This is, they obviously believe in the Sunni religion, at least, one of the most popular versions, let's say, of Islam. Yes, there was a hadith that made Adam a 90-foot giant. 60 cubits tall. And the picture on the left here shows roughly how large 90 feet potentially could be. So you can see here the human beings at the bottom in relation to what 90 feet looks like. Yeah, so this is, the Prophet said Allah created Adam, making him 90 cubits tall when he created him. He said, go and greet that group of angels and listen to their reply, for it will be your greeting, salutation, and greetings, salutation of your offspring. So Adam said to the angels, Assalamu alaikum, i.e. peace be upon you. The angel said, Assalamu alayka wa rahmatullahi, i.e. peace and Allah's mercy be upon you. Thus the angels added to Adam's salutation the expression wa rahmatullahi. Any person who will enter paradise will resemble Adam in appearance and figure. People have been decreasing in stature since Adam's creation. So this is saying that basically when Adam was created, he was 90 feet tall. And that since that time, we've been getting smaller in size. But when you go back into paradise, you're going to be 90 foot tall again. I'll leave you to make your own assessment on that one. Is it real or not? Yeah, because this is what people have been basing their souls upon. Dagon. 1 Samuel chapter 5, verses 2 to 7. It says, when the Philistines took the ark of God, they brought it to the house of Dagon and set it by Dagon. And when they of Ashdod arose early on the morrow, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the earth and before the ark of the Lord. They took Dagon and set him in his place again. 4, and when they arose early morning, behold, Dagon was fallen upon his face to the ground before the ark of the Lord, and the head upon the palms of his hands were cut off, and upon the threshold only the stump of Dagon was left to him. 55. Therefore, neither the priest of Dagon nor any that come into the Dagon's house tread the threshold of Dagon in the Ashud unto this day. But the hand of the Lord was heavy upon them of Ashod, and he destroyed them and smote them with emeralds, piles. That's a nice gift. Even Ashod and the coast thereof. 7. And the men of Ashod saw that it was so. They, the ark of God of Israel, were not able to abide by us, for his hand is sore upon us and upon Dagon, our God. So Dagon, the fish man. And we see fish man. You can see here in Sumerian iconography here, the fish man, understood. And again, there's various depictions of the fish man Dagon. Yes. See another depiction there. I mean, look at the Pope's hat today, so don't tell me, come and say, hey, well, that's their mythology, isn't it? It wasn't to do with nothing to do with the divine. That's why God destroyed it. Go and look at the Pope's hat. Yeah, the Pope's hat, the mitre, a mitre. The mitre is a fish head. Yeah, very similar to this in design. You put a fish head understood with his open mouth. That is what the Pope is wearing. So they incorporated what you're considering or what they consider to be paganism into the religion and still standing today. Like it's normal to wear part of a fish's head on top of your head. But you've seen it so many times, you don't question it. But let somebody walk down the street with a fish's head. I'm going to work now as a Christian. Let me walk and put a fish's body on my back into my workplace or into the church. What are they going to do? They're going to run you out of the place. Not knowing that the fish's head is what is going back to Dagon. Is Dagon real? Is the fish man real? Yes or no? Another freak. Well, you must say it's real. You must believe in it. You must believe these creatures existed. You must believe that mermaids and mermen, who you say are myth, you must believe in them because you have to believe in fishmen, because it's in the Bible as a word of God. Numbers chapter 23, verses 22. God brought them out of Egypt. He hath as if it were the strength of a unicorn. Deuteronomy 33:17. His glory is like the first of his bullock, and horns that are like the horns of unicorns. With them he shall push people together to the ends of the earth, and they are the 10,000s of Ephraim, and they are the 10,000s of Manasseh. Job 39:9. Will the unicorn be willing to serve thee or abide by thy grip? Job 39:10. Canst thou bind the unicorn with his band in the furrow, or will he harrow the valleys after thee? Ask a Jew today, or so-called Jew or Judahite, or somebody who's of those religions, a Hebrew Israelite, so on and so forth. Are unicorns real? Ask a Muslim who believes in the Torah. Ask a Christian who believes in the Old Testament. Are unicorns real? They're going to tell you, no, they're not real. And say they are myth. Yet, how many animals could they have said compared the strength of? Is a unicorn the most strongest animal in existence? That you couldn't choose another of the real animals to make a comparison to. You chose a mythological creature. Go back 500 years. Yeah. Let's go back to the 1600s. Let's go back to even the 1500s or 1400s. Men and the imagination of men at that time, claiming to be right in the words of gods or go back 1400 years. But this is what people have based their souls upon. This is what they're relying upon when the fire or the burning of life stops and they stop breathing. Yes? That all of what they've read, all of what they've studied, all of what they've invested their emotional energy into is going to be real. Based off of men who, if you met them in the physical, certainly as an Agaru, would probably want to kill you because you were black. You understand? Or certainly they wouldn't have invited you and invite you into their homes or family, etc. They would have absolute hate for one in a lot of instances. So this is what people are relying upon. So no, there's no way out of it. You question them and those who believe and say, hey, is this real? Dragons. Are dragons real? Another question. Are dragons real? Psalms 91. They shall tread upon the lion and adder, the young lion and the dragon shalt thou trample under their feet. Isaiah 27, verse 1. In the day that the Lord with his sore and great and strong sword shall punish Leviathan, the piercing serpent, even Leviathan, that crooked serpent. He shall slay the dragon that is in the sea. Revelation chapter 12, verses 3 to 7. And there appeared another great wonder in the heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his head. And there was a war in heaven, and Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels. So are dragons real? Now someone can say to me, well, here, this represents the system. It represents the, United Nations, etc. Today. But it's the master teacher who came down and broke that down in the 70s. You didn't tell us. You didn't say that, what it represented. Someone came along and taught you that. And what is it in this context? And what is it in this context? Are dragons real? So will you tell me what is the difference when you're reading the Bible, which contains the Torah, and you're reading the Quran? What's the difference between that and watching Game of Thrones on HBO Max? HBO Max is a new Bible. HBO Max is a new Quran. At least there, you can go and ask the actors, yeah, how did you do this? How was that done? Boom, 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 boom. You can't ask anybody to verify what this meant, that meant, etc., etc. Because they're not around anymore, conveniently. They're all dead. So are dragons real? Cockatrice. Isaiah 11:8. And the sucking of the child shall play on the hole of the asp, and wean the child shall put his hand on the cockatrice den. What is cockatrice? A poisonous snake, a viper snake, or adder. Yeah. Poisonous snake. For behold, I will send serpents. Yeah, but it's a serpent, not a viper. Yeah, viper, not a snake. So I will send serpents, cockatrices among you, which will not be charmed. They shall bite you, saith the Lord. So the Lord is saying cockatrice, which is a depiction of a cockatrice. So our cockatrice is real. And the Lord makes a distinction between serpents, which is snakes, and cockatrices. Are talking snakes real? And where are these talking snakes today? Where are they? Have we found the bones of this talking snake? Have we found the bones of cockatrices? Have we found dragon bones? Have we found unicorn bones? And when I say we, I mean them. It's their story. One thing out of the thing, please, one thing. Garden of Eden, Noah's Ark. You understand what I'm saying? Something. Adam's bones, Eve's bones, Abraham's bones, Moses' bones, something from the story. Please. Many things have been buried underneath the earth of this planet, on this planet. Many things within the earth. Why can't you find any of the things? In our story, in ancient Kadem Mokmatu, ancient Egypt, many of the ancestors were thought to be myth. And they find their bodies. They're finding things every day from different people's cultures, older than 6,000 years old, that confirm certain people existed or stories existed, so on and so forth. But here, we can't find none of their stuff. But yet, so much energy and effort is put into maintaining these religions. Yeah, and anybody who seeks to go against it. So here, Leviticus chapter 17, verse 7. 7, they shall no more offer their sacrifice unto devils, after whom they have gone whoring. This shall be their statute forever unto them throughout their generations. So in here, the word that they're using for devil is not the word devil. It's a New Testament concept, but is the word satir. You understand? Which basically is a half man, half goat, hairy individual. You understand? Which I see the depiction there. So again, is the satir real? Yeah, the he-goat, Mr. Tomness from Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. These are the so-called holy books, yeah, which people are placing their souls upon. Isaiah chapter 6, verse 2. And above it stood seraphims. Each one had 6 wings. With twain he covered his face, and with twain he covered his feet, and with twain did he fly. So 6 winged angels, not 2 wings, 6. Again, is this real? Most have never even heard of angels with 6 wings, let's be honest. But yet it's there in the book. Yeah, and then artists have taken what's in the book and have made an image. Wings covering his face and his feet. Why? Who knows? But this depiction, and how come it's not well known in the Judaic world, you understand, and the Christian world, and obviously in the Islamic world. Yeah, because they believe in Isaiah. Here we see it, I mean, one of the last ones in this section, but Revelation chapter 19. Yes? And he hath on his vesture and on his thigh the name King of Kings and Lord of Lords. Revelation 19:17. And I saw an angel standing in the sun, and he cried with a loud voice, saying, all the fowls that fly in the midst of heaven, come and gather yourselves together unto the supper of the great God. That ye may eat the flesh of kings, the flesh of captains, the flesh of mighty men, the flesh of horses, and of them that sit on them, and the flesh of all men, free and bond, both small and great. You understand? So maybe they was hoping for the 90 feet Adams, because there's more food for them, isn't it? The other ones that we read about in the Hadith, understood, but they're smaller now. So we've got these depictions of what? These winged deities. Yeah, in various cultures around the world. Yeah, the Anunnaki, yeah, or the Anakim, as they call them in the Bible. Winged deities, yeah, coming to feed off of, yeah, for the supper of the great God. Not for this ordinary God now, the great God. King of Kings, Lords of Lords, this great supper. So how come they're not talking about this? This feast that's due to be coming, or maybe it's here where they're feeding off of what? Human beings. It literally says it here. How come we don't know about this as the rapture? And are these real? As these fowls, winged men, as angels, or winged fowls here, a bird man with a watch on. Yeah? Maybe why are we so obsessed with watches? Spending inordinate amounts of money on watches, or the obsession with watches. Yeah? An Anunnaki trait. Is he not? Is he not wearing a watch? Yeah? A bird man with a watch. Understand? Doesn't this look like what the judges wear in the courts? And he's got a little handbag. I'll leave it to your own imagination to see where certain things have come from. Yeah, interesting enough, when we're starting to look and respect, yeah, which means to look again, certain influences that sit in our society and where they truly come from. Like high heels showed you that in relation that it's exactly the same as the shape of a dog's foot. Not everything is for us. See people wearing double watches now on both wrists, certain rappers, etc., etc. Oh, is it a new style? You see it for what it is. Yeah. So this is showing you, as say, with the freaks, that there's these all the way through, and we're just giving a few of the situations here, or a few of the creatures. Excuse me. Here, the book even goes into more detail, understood, and more creatures. Just showing you an excerpt of them for the purposes of today. Yeah. So all of the nonsense is that bad information which is put out there, but sitting behind it, as I say, is all of this Celtic religion. Yeah, understood. So there's no way you could put your soul on this gamble. You understood? Like dice, gamble your soul on what is written in these books. Understood? And be assured of the result when your life expires. Yeah, of where you are due to be going. Yeah, it's setting you up to be utilized. You're being used in this world, and it's setting you up for further pain in the next one. Any questions?
There are no questions.
And no questions here.
1 second. So, talk a little bit more about the descendants of the perfect creature and us. So we understand, as I say, that our we didn't realize, but one of the reasons why Orion, as they call it, you understand, or Masa'a, Sabat Natham, understand, the Orion star system features heavily in our culture, and Sabat Natham, the Sirius star system featured in our culture, is because at the origin of our DNA is from there. So King's Chamber, as you're familiar with, aligns itself with the Orion star constellation, and the Queen's Chamber with the Sirius star constellation. And then the combination, we see here some depiction of the Dragonian star constellation also there, mixing together, interesting enough, in this structure being referred to as the pyramid, but that's not its name. We know his name is Mir, or Mirat, plural. Excuse me. That word pyramid means middle fire, and is tied into pyra, fire, middle. It ties into the solar plexus, understood. Whereas the Mir, obviously, in our language, is dealing with the is in with a person's third eye. You understand? Now, the original pyramid is a person's nose. You understand? On the face. And it obviously links to the middle fire, which is the person's solar plex. You take in oxygen, you process it in a melanin-dominated individual. And that's obviously why we've got big noses and big lips, is to process or take the ether or air and process it accordingly to heat the body and drive energy. Also take energy within the body, because it creates gases which drive a number of processes within our body. Understood? And the word pharaoh, understood, which in their language, again, in Greek, ties it back into the middle fire, doesn't mean the same in the Sabaic language. It's not really pharaoh, it's para aha. Understood? Pa para raye aha. Pa para raye aha. The temple, para, temple, of raye, sun, and moon, aha. The temple of the sun and moon. Understood? This is what the pharaoh, let's say pharaoh, but the pa para raye aha was considered to be the link individual between us and the Natharu, who are sons, S-U-N, sons, physical sons, which we are their descendants as a terrestrial incarnation of those sons. Now, one has to understand that the human body, excuse me, as we talked about or touched upon earlier, obviously is a mathematical miracle. Understood? And so when we're talking about divinity, then really it sometimes is used poorly as a loose word in maybe other places of some, I suppose, obscure divine intelligence that we cannot have knowledge of and know much higher than ourselves, etc., etc. But we don't teach that. So the reality of the situation is when we talk about intelligent divine, design, or plan of extraterrestrials, as one of those actual facts is named, is all of those things. It just depends how far you go back. To the very origin of things. And what the Nagaru has to realize, or the Negroid has to realize, is their place. When we're being called Nawep Mokwan, or supreme beings, that's nothing to do, it's not an egotistical statement. It's not designed to be an egotistical statement. These titles are designed to inform you of who you are. So you can start to explore that ascension journey and pathway and your development on the level that it needs to be taught at. They're not titles of grandeur. Remember, in the early, on the early True Light tapes in the religious degrees, it was explained to you even back then. Once you get over wallowing in in the fact that you're considered, and religious terms are used, but you're Abraham's this, you're this, that, etc., descendant of this person, so on and so forth. Then we can get down to the real information. So that was the stage. Yeah, as you saw when Honorable Elijah Muhammad came, he taught the then members of the Nation of Islam a lot of facts, wasn't it? Yeah, and put them in suits, bow ties, etc. Got them clean shaven, cleaned up, whatever, and gave them a number of facts in terms of the lessons and supreme wisdom. Because when a certain person starts kicking facts, overstood, yeah, it sounds heavy, innit? Yeah, it sounds like you know something. It gives a person a certain status. Yeah, we can talk about it. Yes, well, the universe breaks down as 76% dark energy and 24% dark matter, which makes up 90% of the dark universe, and 10% of all existence, what we can see, suns, etc., makes up everything that we can see. Yeah, Earth is 93 million miles away from the planet. The planet is 24,892 miles in circumference. When a person starts kicking facts, it sounds like they know something. So it's given us a certain level of self-esteem, yeah, raising us back up, which is what he did at that particular point, at that time. Overstood. But it wasn't the real deal. Sitting behind that is some real knowledge and real deal information that the person now needs to know. Once they've got over, or at least their self-esteem has been raised to a level where, okay, cool, now I've got over that bit, at least to the best as we can do within this environment. I've got some foundation of who I am. Now I'm interested in now learning more. Absurd. And so that's where we're at. Certainly where we were going through and are at now, where, as I say, with the actual facts, the parts are at the master secrets, you're getting the real deal as it is. So when a person's seeing I'm a supreme being, it's not, well, how can you be a supreme being? Only God is the supreme being and blah, 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 blah. Well, we've shown you what God is. And you're not that. We've shown you the nature of God. And that's not what is responsible for what you're talking about with dealing with existence. Their God, or the story of what they taught about their God, their Allah, is part of existence. Did not create existence. They're part of it. They're in heaven. They're not heaven itself. They're in a location. They have motion and movement, etc. i.e. sit on a throne. If you're on a throne, you're in a fixed location in a certain place. You're not omnipresent. You understand? If you're walking a garden to and fro from one location to another, you're not omnipresent. If Allah can come from the heavens down to earth, then Allah has motion and movement. So existence is greater than your God. The environment is greater because your God is within. Your Allah is within and not all. Overstood. Yeah, logically, when you work through, yes, you must be logical. Spiritual must be logical. All of it must be logical. The reason why it becomes magical is because human beings do not understand things that cause and effect. As it explains to you, I think in actual facts, Wu-Sabat or Wu-Sabat, yeah, I think it's number 6, yeah, and also in others as well, is that there are particles of energy that have existed for millions, billions, if not trillions of years. Yeah, and their interaction, yeah, like neutrinos and different types of particles, energy particles, their interaction with each other and different types or whatever, can have an impact on the physical world, which human beings don't understand. Yeah, so it appears magical because of ignorance. It's not magical. It may be magical when we look at the whole thing. I wonder at what takes place, however. But it's not magical because it's magical. It's magical because human beings don't understand it. If they understand how it worked, I'm not saying it's not wondrous. I'm not saying it's not complex. I'm not saying it's not to be admired. Excuse me. But it's magical, as they call it, for that reason, because of the mystery of it. So things can be explained, which is why, as I say, we're interested in the cause and effect. Not interested just in cause and effect. The cause and effect. Hence, it's about supreme beings. We're going back, as I say, to those original energy forces, not just focused on the material or the world of matter. Yeah, interested in all. Yeah, in order to get to that point, well, we're not fighting against, we're not competing, we don't need to be under. We're acknowledging that we are part of all. As we said in the very beginning, we are part of it. And a part in the rules of existence, a thing, and the rules of all things are exactly the same. Hence, why a mother can donate an egg, understood, and a father can donate a sperm and produce a whole human being. Part becomes whole, isn't it? You donate a part of yourself in order to make another whole. The all, or these alls, or the alls are creating another, the all. So part, for us at least, part and all are the same. We look up at the so-called night sky. Yes, we're the same color as us. All colors, black light, which they made bad in this society. So it's giving you a window into who you are. Understood, which is why, as we said in the last class, Wu-Sabat teaches you don't learn Wu-Sabat. Because there's things that we don't know. Yeah, but we have to put ourselves in a position to be taught. I'm saying it again because it's important. Humble yourself into a position to be taught. And even then, not drag. Of course, one has to have understanding, or it doesn't make sense. But at the same time, you have to elevate to what's being taught, not just drag it down to your level of understanding of things. Otherwise, how would you learn anything new? Yes, you must read around the subject. You must, and I don't mean reading around the subject doesn't always mean go to the white man stuff and find out. Obviously, at certain points, it can be useful to take in various different sources of information, but you're using Wu-Sabat as your frame of reference. And our doctrine is vast, where things are explained in other parts of the doctrine. You have to be able to piece things together. Yeah, because it's a vast array of stuff that's there. And it's there to teach you. It's not there to trick you. It's there to embrace you. This thing where people think, well, I know more than this person, and I've got this secret interpretation of what's being presented on the page. Yeah, so therefore you need to come to me to understand it and learn it. Most of the people on this call would do a far better job than I'm doing right now, or any other student teacher, if they applied themselves. It's all written there for you to say. It's all written down for you to say. It's there to study, to piece together. It's there for you to do that. Go out and teach it. You understand? You realize that in service of others, you yourself are learning. So you put yourself in a position to teach others, you are learning as well. Each one teach one. It's a certain science is there, isn't it? Yeah, so we have to put ourselves in position to learn and then obviously execute. Yeah, a fact, one of our maxims, or one of the maxims we had known, is a fact kept to oneself is a lie. Imagine that. A fact kept to oneself is a lie. So we're supposed to be teaching others, and we're only as great as the quality of the composite parts of the network. So you have to understand, if you study a little bit how the internet works, understood, it's a decentralized system. Now, we work from the center out because we're working. I'm going to explain this in a little bit. We work from the center outwards, yeah, because obviously we are suns, and the nature of suns is they give birth to other suns. We're in a solar system that started at a singular point and expanded out. Absurd. So we have a certain way in which our culture is structured. You understand? Physically and spiritually, obviously to match and align with natural nature. Understood? However, as you are well familiar with, each of different cells contains, you know what I mean, a soul. And it's a solar system in its own right. Understood? They just happen to be gathered together and held together by forces which you are calling human body. Understood? Yeah. And your soul is within there. Understood? Helping in your mind, etc., and thoughts, all holding it together, which you consider yourself to be an individual, a person from a certain perspective. You understand? That is correct. Excuse me. However, you understand, when you think about us as even now today, as we're connected on this internet, it's interesting that a lot of the technology even that we're using today mimics or is designed upon natural nature. They don't come up with no new ideas. Throw that thing out your head. You know what I'm saying? Everything's based on things that they've seen, interpreted, etc., from stuff that other people have oftentimes done. Yeah, that's the nature of the Mukasu. But what we're talking about in this network, at least, is an exchange. So your router and how you're connected to the network is drawing data in, isn't it? And it's sending data back again. It's an information exchange. It's not necessarily a central point where everything is outputting out from, but you've got these different nodes, which are, as I say, you're sending, hey, I'll give you, and then I'm drawing something back. So I'll do a search on a particular thing. That answer may not just come from all the nodes, for example, based in the UK. It could come from anywhere in the network where it's got the answer. Understood? And it's important to understand that. So when we're talking about these supreme beings or the Nagaru in terms of their design, understood, we make up part of the network, understood, which was there from the very, and have parts of us which were there from the very origin of things. Yeah, but some things, listen to what I'm saying, some things have always existed. Some things came along after a certain point within existence, but some things have always been it. It's a hard concept for people to understand that not everything has a birth and an origin, that some things are and have always been. Yeah, and growth has taken place out of it. Yeah, so the achach within us, for example, has always been. As the etheric part of us. It's always been. Other things have come along later. So we have to understand that our role in what we're being taught is not only brand new, but we have to pay attention and have to read around certain subjects. Now, one of the things that's being expressed in Freaks and the Perfect Creature is that obviously human beings or the body, etc., being a semiconductor. The human body is a semiconductor. And part of the role of that, so for all intents and purposes, we're letting frequencies in and we're blocking frequencies. So we're sending frequencies out. So frequencies being allowed in, frequencies being blocked, and frequencies being sent back out again. You understand? In terms of energy, let's classify it as that for now. And so we're going to explore now what that means in the context of not only who we are, but the wider network. Because you've heard it said, a Nagaru always has to be, for example, in the solar system. It's one of the aspects or forces that stops the planets from collapsing into each other in terms of a star holocaust. So that being here of a certain our presence and the way we contribute to energy transformation, from outformation to information, the way we contribute to that, we are part of the forces that at least gives the illusion of things being held in a certain place, space, and time. We contribute to that just by being here and who we are. And so understanding this context, excuse me, that, I mean, there's no real thing as Black culture. The culture that we live and aspire to is the culture of existence. Hence, when we spoke to you last week from parts of actual fact, the history, we said really the real name is not even, we're not even using the term Salau of race. It's been replaced by planetary nation. And actually, we are truly referred to as the all nation because we are part of existence. Everybody got birthed from us. That's what we represent. The all within all, truly. There is no them without us existing or being known to exist. That's another thing in itself. It's one thing existing, another thing being known to exist, hence why you were given, or when you were the importance of being given what we would call a tribal name. Yeah, because your ancestors or the Natharu, in a sense, they don't recognize those dead tones. So when you were given a name symbolically, yes, and are given a title in your own language, Miss Batia, with the right tones, that brought you to life in a certain sense. Yeah, because you were known to exist by your ancestors. Yeah, you were known to exist. Yeah, even though you existed. But once I gave you a name now, you were known to exist. Yeah, and it could be identified and recognized. The importance of a name, or one of the importance of a name, or being renamed appropriately, or given the right type of tone. All right, let's get into this supreme network understanding. So we're going to watch a short video.
Hello everyone, this is Dr. Rupinder Syal and welcome again to Spartan Tutorials. Today we are going to talk about collagen, very important protein. It is found in all multicellular animals and it is one of the most abundant proteins in vertebrates. It is almost 30% vertebrates. We are actually mostly collagen. If you think about our skin, our bone, our ligaments, tendons, they are all made of collagen. Okay. So today we are going to talk about structure of collagen in more detail. So let's get started. So as I said, collagen is found in many different tissues. For example, in bone, in tendons, which connect bones to the muscles, ligaments, which connect to different bones. And it is one of the major components of our skin. And if you think about it, leather coats and many of the things, for example, gelatin, they are all collagen. So whenever you see somebody wearing leather coat, just think of it as somebody wearing a collagen coat because our skin or hide is basically collagen. So what does collagen structure look like? Collagen is very high tensile strength material. It has more tensile strength than steel of the same cross section. So collagen structure is made of these fibrils. The major ultrastructure starts with the collagen fibers, which are located in the, for example, this tendon sheath shown here. And inside there are multiple fibrils, and each fibril contains many microfibrils, and each microfibril is composed of 3 polypeptide chains, and that is the ultimate structure of collagen, this triple helix. Okay, that's what we are going to focus on. So how is collagen made in the cell? Collagen is made just like another protein. First, it is synthesized as a procollagen, and these procollagen molecules are chopped off by procollagen peptidase, which cleaves some of the amino acids from the N terminus and C terminus, and it leads to formation of the single molecule which is known as tropocollagen. Okay, this is about 3000 angstrom in length, Okay, and many of these tropocollagen molecules, they associate to form collagen fiber, and after that it is secreted out and it gets cross-linked, and there is an enzyme which is called lysyl hydroxylase, which is involved in cross-linking of different tropocollagen fibers. Okay, and this leads a remarkable amount of strength, but it also makes it a little bit brittle sometimes in the future, for example during aging. As the age of an organism progresses, the collagen gets more and more cross-linked. So this is the collagen triple helix. So there are 3 polypeptide chains here. Each polypeptide chain contains a left-handed helix. It's not an alpha helix, but it is a left-handed helix. And these are arranged in such a manner so that the overall collagen helix, which is the triple helix, it is right-handed in its twist. So individual chains are left-handed, but the overall collagen helix is right-handed. Okay, very important distinction to make, and that gives it a structure, a huge amount of tensile strength. Now there are 3 important amino acids which are repeatedly found in collagen structure, and those are glycine, proline, and 4-hydroxyproline. Actually, the formula or the repeating motif in the collagen structure is glycine, X, and Y. X usually is proline, and Y is a modified form of proline which is called 4-hydroxyproline. If you compare the structure of proline and hydroxyproline, you will see that instead of here where we have the carbon attached to hydrogens, here we have an oxygen here, so that is the hydroxyl part, OH. Okay, so that is the 4-hydroxyproline, and it is added by an enzyme called prolyl hydroxylase. This hydroxylation, this is not an amino acid which is formed during translation, but it is a post-translational modification of collagen. Okay, after it is incorporated into collagen, prolyl hydroxylase works on it and does this modification. Interestingly, prolyl hydroxylase requires ascorbic acid for its activity, because one of the active sites contains iron atom, and that needs to be in the ferrous state, not in the ferric state, for its optimal activity, and ascorbic acid is important for regenerating that oxidized form of iron. Now here is the collagen triple helix. We have glycine, proline, hydroxyproline, repeating 3 single alpha chains which are individually left-handed. They form the super helix which is ultimately right-handed. So it is hard for you to make it out here, but if you look at this structure, it is a little bit tricky to see here, but overall it is a right-handed triple helix. Okay, and that gives its molecule the huge amount of tensile strength. Alright, we can also look at the actual published 3-dimensional structure of collagen from Protein Data Bank, and that will give you a little bit more idea about the handedness of the helix. Okay, so this is the structure of 3-stranded collagen triple helix. Here you can see the left-handed form of the helix. Here we have the hydroxyproline shown in blue and green sticking out. The glycine is not shown here, and if you zoom out, then you can see the right-handed helix nature of the overall collagen helix. Okay, individual chains are left-handed, but ultimately the collagen helix is right-handed. Okay, so that finishes our discussion of collagen triple helix. I hope you enjoyed this lecture. If you have any comments or questions regarding collagen structure, please let me know in the comments below. As usual, please give your valuable feedback. Till we meet in the next video, take care and bye-bye.
Right, so maybe a bit complicated for some, but it's giving you this, as I say, this detail that effectively, that this particular set of molecules understood as part of the human body, in bones, in tendons, is, as I say, there throughout the body, and its structure allows us, as I say, to semiconduct electromagnetic energy. So our bones, obviously our flesh, etc., the structure of it is set in a way that allows us to say this, not only conducting, but taking in what we're calling outformation. It then being interpreted by the body and then being sent out in a certain way. So controlling these kind of energy packets. So our structure of our body is not just there to help, I don't know, muscles contract in terms of movement or motion. It has other properties in the way in which it's structured. This is the amazement of it that we're now, as I say now, but we're getting to peer into and better understand our place. So you're doing things that, say, as an individual, you kind of understand that. Obviously, what you consider to be your conscious choices that you make. What you may not have an understanding of is that basically the fact that you're even here and that you've been born and that it's gone through these various different stages of the rules of existence to be here, and our connection between the world of things, which is the origin of matter, which is the birth, is the reason why matter exists, because the world of some things is the world of matter, the world of things is considered to be the world of energy. And the fact that we're here means that we have a wider role to play within existence, understood, because we are the kind of connecting forces and tissues within these, not only the universe, dualverse, multiverse, as part of the omniverse, understood. And we're going to get into something which I'm going to show you a bit later, that shows us why we have to learn certain terminology in how it applies in Wu-Sabat and not how we consider it to be generally of our understanding, say, for example, in English and by definitions used in the West. It's got nothing to do with race per se. It's got to do with when the master teacher and us as his students is explaining something, understood, in the limitations of the English language. You have to understand what is the author or what is the teacher talking about, understood, and very specifically, what does he mean when he is using the words, not how others are using the words. Yeah. So, and that's what it is to be a master teacher, understood, because another way to be looking at it is you've got to master what the teacher's teaching. And it's becoming more important the more and we're into our culture, because only somebody who's from it and understands it can teach it. Now, so we're speaking in the context of us being a semiconductor of electromagnetic energy, understood? So I think people understand what a conductor is, the reason why it's semi, because at certain points, maybe at a certain temperature, it is a good conductor of certain waves, forces, etc. And at other times, it will resist. You understand? So it can do both. Now, one of the things that the book is asking us to start to look into and understand a lot better is liquid crystals. Now, liquid crystals, interesting about it, how they understand it, I suppose, when I say they, i.e. the Mukasu and the West, etc., is that a liquid crystal exhibits the properties of a liquid and exhibits the properties of a solid at the same time, understand, or can mimic both. So water, for example, you would understand it in its crystalline state to be ice. But water, for example, when it transforms by the application of heat, for example, fully becomes liquid. It's not in this kind of, you understand? It's either solid or it's liquid. It's kind of in one state or the other. Whereas blood, for example, when you wake up in the morning, the reason why you're kind of sluggish and tired is because your blood is in a more solidified state. Understood? And what you consider to be waking up is your blood starts to liquefy. Understood? Over, minutes or hours or whatever. And so in its kind of liquid state, even though it contains a lot of solid things, for example, is when you're a lot more active, you've got a lot more energy, etc. Which is why they drink water or in the morning, throughout the day, for example, because you're helping the process of liquefying this blood. So the blood acts more, in fact, more like a liquid crystal properties, exhibiting both the properties of a solid and a liquid at the same time. This is there to some degree. I'm giving you the simplistic version, understanding of what is taking place. And so you can see that just in the only event is highly scientific. And you have to start getting back, even though the Mukasu, it makes it a minefield in learning these various different terminologies. You have to understand, okay, boom, it's all replicated systems. So if you understand how your body's set up, understand, you're going to understand how a universe is set up, how a solar system is set up, etc., etc. So it's all similar types of systems being replicated, but in different ways and different designs. It's important for you to understand, as the Master expressed, know who you are. Know who you are doesn't mean I'm descended to this person, I'm descended from that person, etc. Understood? That's one aspect of it. Understood? Which is placating a little bit your ego. Oh, I'm linked to this, I'm from this country. Just know who you are has a hidden meaning. It means know how your body works. Because in knowing how your body works, you are also making a study of a universe. You are also making a study, if you understand your solar plexus, of a sun. Understand things which, in our perspective and our relation to it, from us as individuals, seems almost impossible given the sizes of things. However, when we're a part of it and we're merged to it, we would understand it all because we're a part of it. If we're connected in the right way, we would understand it a lot better. Where we're at, we've got to go through a certain journey, to reach that state, which was touched upon in terms of us becoming 720 again, or completely etheric beings in that regard. And that doesn't happen until we transition to the point of what they call death. You understand? Not that we're wishing that, but it's a doorway to a next level of existence for us. Understood? Yes, so one must master the physical 360 and they must master the spiritual 360 to become 720 again. This is part of what we're doing, I say, in this school called Taha or Earth. Now, so we know that tendons help to link our muscles, etc., to our skeletal structure. Understood? And we have to understand that the structure of these, like collagen and some of these other materials, allows or makes it more conducive for us, as I say, to translate information around the network called the human body. Understood? And so, but importantly, it allows us to take outside energy and cause it to work within the human body also. So liquid crystal, as we would classify it for us, is not necessarily just dealing with the fact that it has the properties of a solid and a liquid. Understood? And there are good reasons for that, which I'm going to get into a little later, because the real definition of what a liquid is, the real definition of what a solid is, changes when you start to move into the understanding of what the Panatharu are dealing with. Yeah, we have not encountered real liquid yet on this planet. Yeah, we're calling it liquid, but it's not liquid. So this is why we have to now study carefully how certain terminologies are being used in the context of us, as I say, as coming into our culture. Now, certain crystalline properties, which we're going to get into what liquid crystals are to make it easy. So collagen is a type of liquid crystal. DNA is a type of liquid crystal. Myosin and something called actin, which you see mentioned there, which basically are what considered to be the outer shell of cellular membranes involved in muscle movement, you understand, in terms of contraction and expansion, understood, are the sort of layers which cover some of the muscle tissues. Now, for us to understand this more cleverly, for example, because some of these terminologies are quite difficult, you need to go away. See these things in black here? Yeah, when you're reading in a book, it means to go away and do more research on it. That's what it basically means. It means it can be looked up effectively. And so some of that means looking up in sources within our own scrolls. You need to go to another scroll and it will explain it in more detail. And that's the best way. Sometimes you can't find it, you may need to go to other sources. But if you go to other sources, you need to check those sources and always have your protections on when you're dealing with other sources. Yeah, so you still need to go through the same questioning detail as you would do. You don't just look something up, pick it up, and I absorb that as being true. No, you take it on board, you filter it, and then you consider it in the context of what you're trying to understand here. Now, why I say it's important to understand about what they're calling these lipids, or what could be the skin of a cell, is it's highly intelligent. The first defense of your immune system, for example, as a human being, is your skin. Yes, so when we consider our immune system, yes, the first aspect of it and the largest aspect of it is your skin. It's not T cells. When we get into T cells and all this kind of stuff, it is your skin. Yeah, and what you understand is that the human body is not as solid as we think. This is even going back, way back. Yeah, true light tape understanding. When Master gave an explanation and showed the person, the reason that you know you're not as solid as what you think you are is because if you took a needle, you would be able to push it from one aspect of your hand right through and push the needle through to the other side. And you encounter bone and certain things. That's showing that your body is not as solid as you think you are. It's a conglomeration, of cells, molecules, atoms, and particles which are gathered together. You're not fully solid. And so when we're looking at these membranes, etc., the reason why it's important to understand, because they're highly intelligent. Understood? And it's deciding what should be let in this instance, to a cell, and what should be not let in, and then what comes out of the cells in context of these tissues and membranes, which we've not got enough time to go into today. But they also do this thing of processing, energy through the mitochondria. We know mitochondria produces adenosine triphosphate, understood, and then when that energy gets spent, it becomes adenosine diphosphate, and it has to be replenished. And mitochondria is the battery of cells that replenishes this process as and when we work. So if you're not understanding all of the fancy terminology that's being used, makes it sound like we know something. The importance is that there's a transfer of energy taking place. Yeah? The term outformation is used. Outformation, understood? So out of that formation, or this energy from outside coming into the planet, there is a structure or a human body that is able to process that in a certain way. Understood? And when it takes it outside, it comes inside, it becomes information. Understood? But then that information can also be translated back out of the human body to also contribute back into outformation. So there's this transfer of energy here. Understood? Which is giving you some understanding of who and what we are in this context. Now, let's look at some of these verses. You're not covering all of the stuff. You can leave something on the table, so when you get the book or whatever, you can go into more detail. Yeah? But understanding liquid crystal for the moment. So 32, highly irregular. This is from Fruits of the Perfect Creature. 32, highly regular paralleled array of molecules, whether it's in liquid or solid form. So to them, it's exhibiting, yes, solid and liquid properties. Yes, that's a good way for us to kind of go in and have some better understanding of it. But understand we have our own definition or whether that builds upon that, for lack of a better word. Now, saying here, it's called a Ba'h crystal. The word English crystal is from the Greek crystallos, ice-like, chrysos, frost. See, if you were to look at the crystalline structure, is that you would get replicated patterns of those same atoms and molecules, etc., in a fixed state, isn't it? Yes? And so that gives you a more crisp feel of what a crystal is. Whereas if you're talking more liquid state, it's going to be a lot more fluid, isn't it? Those patterning. Understood? But it's important for us to understand what's taking place. Now it says crystals are highly ordered array of molecules found in several different kinds of tissue, including DNA in our Yachasat genes, photosensitive rod and cones rods enable us to detect black and white, or what we would consider to be dark and light tones, you understand, when it comes to light, and the cones enable us to detect colors. So that's the difference between them. In our sayakat cells at the back of the ayanat eye, retina, the myelin sheath of the nerve cell, the collagen molecules make up the connective tissue, muscle tissues, densely packed molecules of actin and myosin, photolipids of cell membranes. 35. Ba'h crystals conduct radio waves and are semiconductors. 36. This crystalline structure of collagen molecules that make up the human connective tissue is a semiconductor. This is an important part here. 37. Each cellular race, one color, or bar hair, nappy kinky, or fara fur texture is unlike in many ways. Each has their own station or wavelength of communication of tones, waves, colors, and subatat sounds that affect the damagh brain and as such the emotional state of the akal mind. So as we keep emphasizing, yes, it's in certainly when we spoke about last time, as a race, you can't choose your religion. Yeah, because your physical structure, before it was physical, was vibrating within a certain energy range, frequency range. And so obviously you're still connected to that. All your Wu-Sabat in this aspect of it is teaching us is how to reconnect with natural nature. And we don't, as all races, connect to the same wavelengths. We don't connect to the same sources of outformation, as one would call it, within the same range, because we don't look the same. Our hair texture is different. Our color is different. So that obviously the composite parts of those intelligent gas forces that led us that when it slowed down in vibration and manifested into the physical, it ordered a certain look of the individual person. Their body turned out a certain way. So you can't be the same under the skin, literally, otherwise we would look the same. There must be differences. Now, that's not the same as how a person should be treated or not treated, which is maybe what people seek to infer. who want to the only reason for trying to say we're the same on skin is because certain people want to hide the fact that some human beings are more superior to others. Now, it doesn't mean superior, i.e. rule you and subjugate you. It just means that they are superior. They have more qualities. Whether you want to call it vibrating across a greater range, that's what it is. Now, when it was us, we didn't have a problem with it. We worked within the society and still do, even though we were treated or considered to be lesser than. But when he finds out he's lesser than, then no one else can know anything. Everybody must be ignorant. You understand? Because he doesn't want other human beings to find out, hey, you're the lowest on the vibrational scale in comparison to other races, naturally occurring races on the planet. So let's delve into this in a bit more detail. So let's look at what liquid crystals are, and I'm going to just study something in the Holy Tablets will help us for our greater understanding of this.
Most of us were taught that there are generally 3 phases of matter: solids, liquids, and gases. But did you know that there are also intermediate phases called liquid crystals? At certain temperatures, some materials become liquid crystalline, which means they tend to flow like a liquid, but have some of the optical properties of a solid due to the ordered arrangement of their molecules. Liquid crystals can be found both in the natural world and in technological applications. First discovered in 1888, we now know of several liquid crystalline phases, each with unique characteristics and applications. Lyotropic liquid crystalline phases are found in living systems such as proteins and cell membranes. Thermotropic phases occur in a certain temperature range. The 3 most common types are cholesteric, smectic, and pneumatic. Cholesteric liquid crystals reflect different wavelengths of light based on their pitch and are used for mood rings, thermometers, and some displays. Smectic liquid crystal molecules form layers, much like soap. And pneumatic liquid crystals can be aligned by an electric field, which makes them very useful in modern liquid crystal displays on cell phones, calculators, portable computers, and flat-screen televisions. So as you can see, liquid crystals are almost everywhere. Our researchers at the Liquid Crystal Institute at Kent State University continue to learn more about the exciting world of liquid crystals every day. Learn more and become a part of the innovation at Kent State University at www.kent.edu/LCI.
So you can see, if you've never heard of that term before, that these things are out there. And one of the benefits of the Master Teacher and why he's been such a benefit to the Nagaru race is that he's positioning us to have knowledge and understanding where maybe the world or the most advanced aspects of the world are having these kind of discussions. But if you come from a certain place, background, so on and so forth, you'd have no knowledge of these things. Yeah. And so we've always been placed in a position where we're, at one time when he's not incarcerated, but certainly 10 years ahead of where human beings are at, understood, collectively or globally. And still retains to seek to do the same thing, but obviously within being incarcerated, us need to get free, it's affected by that. Understood? So it's important that we need to be at the head of what's going on, or even ahead. When I say ahead, I mean at the top of what's going on, and ahead. As the 2 words mean, to be not caught out, understood, by things which are happening now and to take place in the future. Now, let's go into the Holy Tablets, chapter 6, tablet 15, and try and work through this. If we don't get through it, it's going to be something that we're going to finish in the next class. We're going to be badged as something else. Now, slightly ignore some of the older terminology here. It's due for some update because obviously we're in the finality of the schools that we're in now. So some of these orders had their place for a certain time, but are not relevant to what we're teaching today. So we're going to start from verse 147. It says, these forces affect, excuse me, we're going to start from 147. These forces affect the rhythms of life and the appearance and extinction of a species within the Earth's magnetic field. 147. The higher evolution will give a better understanding of how electric forces alter biological rhythms. 49, and it says some of this terminology is old, so we're not the Adamites, but just understand, just referencing human beings. Now, this will allow Adamites in this conscious time zone to receive whole-like beings who will give instruction of the next ordering of evolution in our universe. Now, I'm not going to go into too much detail around this. Suffice to say, we understand or look up dimensional shift, and you understand that obviously us as human beings have our own evolutionary pathway. The planet itself has its evolutionary pathway, which takes place every 24,000 years, which is called a dimensional shift. So it's shifting up the ether ranges. Yeah. And the next shift is to go from where it's at the moment, 6 ether, to 7, 8, and 9 ether. So it's jumping up into levels where only positive, lack of a better word, positive energy can exist. So adverse forces cannot exist at 7, 8, and 9 ether level. Human beings that have not encountered 7, 8, and 9 ether as far as they are aware. So these are finite forms of energy within existence. Understood? So the Mokasu in the next shift is not due to be on that shift, hence why you're seeing nature and other forms seeking to take out unnatural life, as it would be classified as, so it won't exist in this next level of evolution. So basically, when the planet shifts, anything that's not 6 and below will cease to exist on the planet, as far as the planet is concerned. Now, the Mokasu or Caucasian took themselves off of the linked system, which is referred to as the phylogenetic tree, because they started, as we read earlier in the Ghost, started to mix their DNA with animals. So using pig hearts, etc., and things to resolve health ailments, basically took them off of the natural order of things, because this was a violation, say, of the rules that govern this environment. Understood? So they took themselves off of this phylogenetic tree. So when it shifts, you're not having forces in there that pollute the purity of it. Yeah, so through their own fault, not the average guy you probably live next door to, etc. I'm talking about these higher ends who made these type of decisions. Yeah, it's not in accordance, and therefore it's not eligible, one may say, for that. So to protect these higher environments when these transitions take place, these lower life forms are not going to be there. And so they've taken themselves out of that and they've been replaced. If you want to read Dimensional Shift, you'll find the 3 root races which will be in the shift, and Nagaru being one. I'll let you do your own research for the other 2. Now, the forces here in the electromagnetic field, the higher evolution will give better understanding of how electrical forces alter biological rhythms. So this is the point that we're expressing to you, collagen, you understand, and these types of things. They are not just there holding, you understand, bones in place and allowing physical movement. They're ordered or structured in a way where they're able to process, let in certain types of energy, understood, block certain types of energy, but then also secrete certain types of energy, understood. And obviously, this is based around electromagnetic activity. Yeah? So electrical and magnetic forces. This will allow Adamites in this conscious zone to receive whole-like beings and give them the next instruction, next ordering of evolutionary systems. 150. The key speaks of how Earth species has a direct light arc. 151. This direct light focuses, this direct light focus, which controls its biological rhythms. 152. Inner sights, again, old terminology, will soon learn that his life system is not directly dependent upon solar magnetic field to regenerate their biological rhythms. 153. The new source of light is now reaching our solar system and interpenetrating Earth's magnetic field, altering the biological rhythms. Its color is emerald green, contrary to the amber red light. So basically, we understand this to mean, you get the answer of this in the Black Book, that a third of another 2 sets of suns, so what we understand to be the solar system, is widening. You understand? So when you talk about a solar system, why they call it a solar system is because the planets, moons and other things, which were birthed by, if we're taking the sun 93 million miles away, our sun, understood? Yeah, it is still part of it. Same way you have a auratic shell, for example, that can extend 12 feet outside of the human body. It's your atmosphere. So it's still part of you, even though it's wider than what you consider to be the confines of your body. It's your skin. Understood? You've got an atmosphere, a system that is surrounding you. And so when somebody walks into it, for example, you can feel people in your presence before they touch you physically. Do you understand? And you can even feel when people are looking at you and certain things, etc., because certain energy has now entered into your solar system, even in case of somebody looking at you, for example, is something actually hitting you. You understand? So it's electromagnetic forces. So you react to that oftentimes. So what's happening is that the extra 2 suns are coming in to create this trisolar environment, and it's causing then the widening of the type of energy that we are receiving, because we're wired obviously into not only this environment but our sun also. Understood? And that's widening, which is what's been explained here. This is forcing the species to leave behind its old time cell of perception on the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual levels. 155. This must take place before the species can go into a new time cell of consciousness. 156. The arcs of light begin to change as different life forces beginning to work with the electromagnetic forces. 157. This is causing the magnetic fields of the brain cavity to be sufficiently raised to a higher mental frequency. 158, allowing inner sights to receive whole light beings upon the reinsertion of the Ba'h gland and the reactivation of the supreme melanin. The Ba'h gland, which we have the nerve endings of, which was originally in the hippocampus area of the brain, and placed in the area below the chin, used to secrete for us, as it does in the incarnated Natharu, who had the gland, liquid gold, so another liquid crystalline type of material, which some may know as monatomic elements. Understood? These allow enhanced DNA conductivity, reorganizing of junk DNA, and would give us abilities which would be considered by some today superhuman. Understood? But were naturally in us. So the Ba'h gland, the glands or your endocrine or glandular system secretes hormones. And so the Ba'h gland originally secreted, these monatomic elements, platinum, monatomic gold, and other elements, ruthenium, etc., which gave us what we see superhuman capabilities and connected us to our 4 higher senses. This was Natir or Nathar, Tar 10 or Patar 10. Understood? When we were incomplete again, using the 5 plus the 4 higher senses, and the 4 higher senses: telepathy, psychometry, intuition, and clairvoyance. Now, 159. It's previously been thought that the light forces of the Earth's magnetic field control the rhythms of life and of all biological species. 160. And all living cells need only a portion of the light only the light of their own portion of the electromagnetic spectrum to survive. So again, this is showing you in 160, linked back to what we're reading now in the actual facts, is that we're operating within a certain range of the frequency, or life forms, different species are operating in a certain form of the species, of the spectrum. And color is linked to that. Yeah, understood. So 161, human beings, inner sights have a brain, or human beings have a brain of an electromagnetic computer, will be forced to adapt to an enlarged electromagnetic spectrum. The new electromagnetic frequency is an astrobiological threshold by itself. 163, your sun, by virtue of being a variable star, will be seen as having great limitations for future evolutions. So we're talking about, as I say, multiple changes taking place, and as I say, going to 7, 8, 9 ether level of existence. Now, 164. This will be seen by a visible exchange of solar polarity fields, and by magnetic mapping of inner solar magnetic lines rotating faster than that of the surface of the sun. 165. These changes will also affect the rotation of Anshar, Saturn, again, old terminology. 166. This will be seen as periodic effect and will be noticed in the activity of the band of Anshar, Saturn, called its rings. These changes are a result of new biological light that controls being introduced by new administrative order in conjunction with the Council of 9 Ether. Remember that term of how it's said there. Yep. We'll read something later. 168. These changes are necessary to prepare our mortal evolution to overlap with whole light beings of advanced creation in evoluting of new astral mutations. 169. New astral mutations will bring about new magnetic lines. We know the planet is already controlled by magnetic lines, which is why when human beings put buildings, etc., in certain places, it can block the flow of energy through these magnetic lines, and so we sometimes will get a tornado or something that wipes out certain communities or whatever on these lines because we've built our properties in the wrong place. Understood? We get a warning. That's not to say that is responsible for all of the climatic change on the planet. It's just one of the reasons why sometimes these things occur, because nature's system is trying to keep these magnetic lines free. It's like you putting a foot on an archery or something of that nature. Yeah, so it's going to use these tools to try and get human beings to move themselves off because it's interrupting the flow of this energy through the planet. But here we're saying new astral mutations will take place where the magnetic lines bring about the balances in the energy coupling from a proton-electron grid to an electron-proton grid. You understood? What does that mean for us in simple terms? We are turning ourselves inside out, understood, and outside in. So we're becoming more mental. Understood? Become more mental, relying less upon the physicality of our body and becoming more energy-based, understood, as a life form. They become more mental and physical. 170. Here, the bioenergy field of the body inherits a new electron-positron pair, and the blood circulation system inherits new magnetic lines of force. So you're reading here about alteration, as we just explained earlier. The way it's structured allows for this to take place. Yeah. When we look at some of the properties of collagen, the bones, the tendons, etc. Understood? And importantly, these lipid bilayers, understood? Yes, in the form of phospholipids, as well as the liquid crystalline aspects of some of the properties of the materials like DNA and so on and so forth, because it allows for that type of adaptability. Remember, when you read 18 plus 18 plus 1, the 37 genes of the mitochondrial DNA, what that book at its very end introduces you to the fact where Enki, or being known as Enki or Nudimmud, and Ta of the Anunnaki, and and of Ptah of ancient Egypt came together to basically work upon the mitochondrial DNA, understood, or mitochondria. And one of the properties which they altered, remember, because when they were trying to weaponize or hide the weapon of what's to be the broma or leprosy, to kill off the draconians who were eating certain groups of human beings, they sought to poison the food. Remember, they didn't just put leprosy in the cells of the meat, because a standard scan, is a higher level, beings of higher technology, a sky level scan would have detected any kind of virus or disease in the meat. And so they hid the disease within the mitochondria DNA by changing or altering its shape. Yeah, go and read about it. What it meant, it meant that the disease could be triggered from another dimension. Understood? So that's what you're reading about in 18 plus 1. Yeah, the disease could be triggered from another dimension. But the unwarlike or positive aspect of that is that other mutations can be triggered, understood, when the time is right. Understood? They don't necessarily have to be in the physical. They can be programmed at different levels or phases, understood, what we would call within the planes, and then triggered at the right time. For example, like HAR1. So HAR1, for example, is a trigger that caused human beings now, in the last 50,000 or so years, to accelerate in intelligence and accelerate in growth. So what you're learning about when you're looking at the structure of these things, and what we're asking people maybe to pay more attention to what we're seeing here, is that at certain points, clearly, we have to grow. If we don't change, I'm going to say grow, it's not just a case of studying, we're being forced to change. You understand? So as our environment's changing, we also have to shift and change with it. And therefore, there are processes which enable that change or transmutation to take place. You understand? Whether we accept it or whether we don't. But at the same time, we also have to place ourselves in a position to work with it or get left behind. Yeah, and in some detail, I think go back to the class that we did in, I think, part 1 of his story, and maybe part 2 of that story. We were reading from an actual fact, which explained the importance of Sirius and why, as I say, our ancestors collapsed the sun to stop those who were not interested in evolving, let's say, too material, too physical. They cut off their connection to them so they wouldn't have an influence where they were existing in this higher level. Yeah, because remember, you are connected. You have an etheric umbilical cord, the same way you had one that connected you to your mother. You have an etheric umbilical cord. So remember, because of our melanin, we're vibrating across the whole of the spectrum. Our behavior, if not certain properties that control it are put in place, can vibrate up the whole spectrum. Is this way reading Holy Tab chapter 1? They quarantined the environment. They quarantined it to stop that, or our ability to affect higher levels of our self-destructive thinking. Understood? Yeah, not our own fault, but how we have been influenced by those who want to take advantage of us where possible, we're allowed to so that we become feeders for their energy needs, as opposed to progressing our own ascension path and helping our own ancestors. Now, 172. In other words, inner sights will be able to participate in higher evolutionary worlds because his hemoglobin chain will shift with his phylogenetic tree. Understood? So that tree, as we know, is how all these sort of, for lack of a better word, growth changes, not evolutionary change, but evolution is the word used, and how we're interconnected with other species also upon this planet. Yeah, so our growth pathway is referring to this phylogenetic tree, which at its core, you recognize that we are 9 species of us, obviously as Nagaru, of different shades of color, and we're all part of the same family. We have other parts to us, isn't it, which connects us, or as you saw with the map that we showed, the diagram that we showed you in the early part of the class, there are other life forms that have helped to form our structure, isn't it, along the way. You understand? But our structure itself, or the human body, remember, is what they use a term in the old school, the Merkaba. Understood? Mer or Mir, remember dealing with that third eye or the pyramid. Understood? Ka'ah in the sun, and then the Ba'ah, the soul. Yeah, so it in itself is a craft ship. You were reading about Nibiru, or whatever they talk about Nibiru, or the craft ship Nibiru, understood? In the first chapter, remember, in the Holy Tablets, what you were thinking was, there's this craft ship Nibiru, understand? Which we know now, in updated information, is linked to the Anunnaki. But what you may not have been doing when it was talking about, Nibiru can adapt to the 4 different environments, understood? Yeah, air, water environment, etc. When it was adapted to that, you wasn't thinking, that my human body can do the same thing. My human body is a craft ship. You wasn't thinking that. You understand? That it adapts to certain environments, doesn't it? Yeah, when you go into the water, as we've expressed before, as a master teacher expressed, somebody on land throws salt at you in your eyes, you're going to curse them out because it's going to sting you. Yet you have the ability to jump into seawater with high levels of salinity, highly salted, and then you can, after a few seconds or whatever, you open your eyes, they won't sting. You can see in seawater. So your Merkaba, or your physical body, is able to adapt to different environments within the environment. Understood? Yeah, the Tuskegee Airmen. Yes, they were able to operate in environments where there was less air than we have closer to the ground. So our body can adapt to these environments. That's the way it's ordered, obviously, here, as changes are taking place, and hence why the Amun Nabab is coming back now to prepare us for these changes. Yeah, as we see at the end of the 24,000 year cycle, or it's ending of a number of different cycles, obviously clashing or aligning themselves at this key point. So it says your molecular density will have to become less dense and grow more transparent. 175, inner must be completely remade anew by going through the energy grids that control its present biological arrangement, so that he can be revitalized into new grids of attunement. 176, the inner sight must go through the energy grid controlling cell division on his biological level of organization. 177, a planetary biomagnetic grid controlling the collective species of evolution. Yeah. At 176, remember you got morphogenetic fields. We just touched upon the dimensional shifts. We're going to get more into that detail. Seek out Partarak dimensional shift, revised version. 178, when inner sights go through these energy grids, they will activate a new magnetic field and they will displace his old planetary biorhythms. 179. Contrary to what present-day geneticists say, the ultraviolet radiation will be controlled and it will not destroy the sensitive genetic code and coded melanin. 180. It has already been claimed that ultraviolet radiation, when applied to DNA at specific intensities, causes thiamine to dimerize. 181. When the embryonic growth is placed in an artificial environment, which is 182, which is subject to prolonged current magnetic injection, the former embryonic magnetic lines of force in the body can be changed. Yeah. So as we're expressing to you, and we're talking about this in more simplistic terms, Yeah, that it's structured in a way to allow these changes. Yeah, every aspect of the body is structured to allow these changes. This is the magnificence of it. Yes, because remember, your body is not the real you. Your body is the car that is carrying the real you, isn't it? Yeah, and it's obviously being a part of nature. It's adaptable into those changes which are happening in the environment. Yeah, so the DNA is not static. So it is transient. But there are other aspects of the materials that have been used and the way they work are designed to change it. Remember, you're not controlling. You are controlling, but you're not controlling, for example, your heart rate or the flow of blood around your body and different things like that. The system is designed to be autonomous, i.e., work without interference. There's certain things we've got to do: feed, clothe, do whatever, proper, maintain ourselves. But it functions pretty much on its own. It just needs energy. Understood? Excuse me, in order to work. Yeah, so we work within and around it. So it's already connected. When that changes happen, obviously, it also must adapt and change to do that, unless we, of course, do things that hinder that process. Now, through this process, 183, through this process, the whole body can be biomagnetically be recoded and to adapt to a new biological environment without ever having to experience pain according to the human physiological network. 184. This process uses fifth circulatory system, which opens up the pain coding mechanism and property, realigns blood, lymphatic, nervous systems to function in a different biological environment. 185. This is done in the event that transfer of species to a new environment is necessary for the survival of the Nawapians, or Sabaeans in this time. So basically, if things get beyond repair, then the human being can be transferred to a new environment. This is part of, remember, what you're dealing with the gateways, gateways of the guardians, or guardians of the gateways, let's put it that way around. Yeah. So at certain points where we can be shifted, or even shifted physically, or even shifted interdimensionally, so be in the same place but on a higher level of vibration, because the way the universe is structured, as you know, it creates multiple dimensions when it's formed. So obviously the Big Bang creates 8 tones. Those 8 tones basically effectively are 8 worlds, which then each of those 8 subdivides into 8 worlds. So basically, if you shift in vibration, understand, then what this is expressing to us is that, hey, your body will be able to shift and adapt to the new environment, you understand, if we order it to do so. You understand? So it can adapt to, because remember, everything physical is linked to the vibration of the atoms. It's referred to as nutation. Irrespective of its size, they all vibrate at the same rate. There's no force in the universe that can change the nutation rate, you understand, of composite parts of that universe. So if we shift into a different environment where that changes, this is expressing that basically the body has the ability to adapt, you understand, obviously with the help of our ancestors. Now, 186, or this is why it was, excuse me, let me say that differently. This is why it was designed for that purpose, so it could adapt. You understand? So they already thought ahead of this and placed that in the design. 186. This is why our electromagnetic stage of evolution will itself be changed to allow for new patterns of ongoing evolution. 187. Merkaba mechanisms give the cue for the timing of biological change by the Earth magnetic cycles. 188. These changes take place in a matter of hours and can remove the whole species that have evolved in a geological time frame. just explained to you previously, dimensional shift, are certain races are not going to be on the biological or the phylogenetic tree. And this is telling you basically in an instance they can be removed when this shift takes place or happens. 189. Look for inner sights to work with the next electron orbital level of the universal mind, that all your molecular density will have to become less dense and grow more transparent in order to participate in multi-dimensional realities. Inner sights must completely be remade anew. Thus, you have Nawapian, which is phonetically the same as saying the new being. 191. Specifically, inner sights must go through energy grid controlling cell division on his biological level, organization. 192. Before the larger electromagnetic change happens, inner sights will also understand how new growth effects will be the result of electromedicine, which uses electromagnetism. Inner sights, by using light surgery of electromagnetic penetration into the bone marrow, will be able to create new bone growth. So we learn about this because, remember, we're talking about here, we have a discussion about collagen, remember, and the bones and the tendons, etc. Obviously, what do the bones do? The bones, in the bones, I should say, new blood is created, isn't it? Every 6 weeks, etc. New blood is effectively remade. The body, in fact, most, if not all of the organs, the body is continually remaking itself within a cycle. So this sounds heavy, and it is heavy, but actually this is what takes place naturally already within this environment. As it says, it's just saying it it's due to take place in a higher level, because it's like your bones are remaking themselves. All this is saying is, okay, we place it in a new environment, we're preparing it now, and may do that in stages, preparing it for a new environment, etc. The body will adapt. Yes. Now, your planet is no different to any other form of life. It must renew itself. It is like an energy molecule going through renewal and being restored to a new existence. This is called the entropy of Gaia, or entropy of Gaia. 195. All this must be understood. You may, through the ancient mystic order of Melchizedek, that defunct now, and has different names, learn to raise your density level. Raise your density level and stimulate your melanin and awaken dormant energies of divine, making it impossible for you to be enslaved mentally. This will help you create what is called the psychic self-defense. So you understand this, which we've been expressing here, and why the importance of that semi-conductivity is that some things are being let through while others are being blocked. Remember, had our vibrational rate allowed us, or we had maintained ourselves on a 7, 8, and 9 ether level, we could not have been in-housed, we could not have been attacked mentally, because those beings don't have the apparatus to reach us at those higher levels of existence. So one of the reasons for shifting is that you're not subject to attack by these lower forces. The reason why it's being expressed in this way is because what it's showing us is that the mind's eye, understood, isn't it, can be tricked and fooled, and our body can be opened up in a way, for example, isn't it? Usually, whatever, in various situations. It can be exercise. The temperature of your body is going to raise. You're opened up, aren't you? Yeah, you're more susceptible to taking things inside because your pores, etc., of your skin have opened up. So the lack of awareness of these things leaves us vulnerable. You understand? But ultimately, there are environments that these forces cannot penetrate. The only way they could ever seek to do so is by in-housing somebody who had those properties, and either willfully or unintentionally, they've now brought in, you understand, this energy into that environment. But there obviously are fail-safes to that. But obviously, if it's concealed within the individual person, it can create a vulnerability. Absurd, hence why certain checks and balances are in place to avoid that from happening. Yeah, so if we continue to live in and after the likeness of their image, it's going to create a problem if I then upgrade this individual who doesn't have the right mentality. If I upgrade this individual, understood, and they, as I say, they're willing to allow, which, let's be honest, as we talked about this in the last class, there's no environment where we can be where certain emotions will mean that individuals will let a person in of questionable character, maybe, you understand? Or maybe who's not gone through changes, yeah, they'll let them in. Oh, that person did me a favor, or that person did thing, or their story that they're saying, I kind of understand why. Yeah, if their person was doing security at the gate, you know, are they going to be like the immune system? The immune system is designed a certain way. If you don't match the configuration, you're not getting in. You understand? And even sometimes that could be to the detriment, isn't it? Immune systems are attacking the human body or whatever because it's programmed a certain way. Understood? So, you know, if you put somebody there who has emotions, are they going to do the job properly? So if you put them in front of the gate and say, hey, only these people can be let in, yes, and you're left there to make the decision by emotions, the likelihood and the nature of human beings is they're going to let somebody in who's not supposed to be there. So your mother turns up. Are you going to turn her away, or are you going to let her through the gate? Your partner turns up who you're in love with. You're going to let them through? So you can understand the nature of us, not individually, but us as a race, how our compassion has been our downfall. Many times over. So having a soul, having compassion for people can be to our detriment at times, because you're letting people in who, in a lot of instances, sometimes got bad intentions. So you can see, okay, boom, you need to go through these steps. Are these people sincere, not sincere? You can see why Parnathari in that evolutionary pathway that has been left or programmed within the environment for us to succeed within, it has to be done a certain way. And the interesting thing about it is that we are all in, if you look at Nawapian man or Sabian man and the sacred feminine Partarax, one of the things they say to individuals is, hey, you need to become part of the blue and the white house. Now, ultimately, as we've expressed in this class before, the separation by gender is part of it, but we come back around again when you get to the higher orders. Understood? Because when you look at the Sacred Nine, for example, as Breeze referred to as the Enneads, they're all dressed irrespective of gender. They're all dressed the same way. But in separating us out and some of the qualities when you're dealing with the Sabian Grand Lodge or the Order of the Eastern Stars, it's teaching you certain repetition, but if you look kind of behind it, it's teaching how people how to work together as well. That's probably the main thing. How to work together when arguably money is not involved. One of the reasons why people work together and they work in order within certain systems is because they're getting a salary at the end of it. So you work with people that you don't like. You work with people that you get along with, what you do get along with. You understand? Who you know, don't know. You do that. You understand? And you work within that particular system, yeah, because that's what the job dictates. Take money out of the equation, then what? We start adding in all these different types of things for why we need to work with somebody together. But when we were working for the Mukasu, or are working for the Mukasu, we do what we're told and we work for a certain job, etc. And that's not a problem. When it comes to working for ourselves, all of a sudden, we're getting into fatalistic arguments that are going to crash the system that we're seeking to establish or maintain. We make it hard for ourselves because of the lack of ability to control one's emotions for whatever reason. You understand? we don't maintain the system. Yeah, so that, day one, that cycle works. How about day 1,000,000,001? Yeah, are we going to maintain the same cycle? Yeah, the replication of things in the system, is important within certain environments. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Yeah, your cells are not just randomly doing what they want to do. Your heart's just not randomly doing what it wants to do. Yeah, it's subjugated itself to serve, for the benefit of others. Yeah, it's the mind that lacks the discipline, which hence why it has to have certain control, i.e., it will do what it wants to do. You understand? At certain points in time, and so we have to have discipline to control that. The point is that on a certain level where we are in control of our body, we have to decide on how we learn to work with each other, because as we have all been told by every leader that's ever come, including master teacher, our strength is in our unity. Our strength is not in our individualism. It's in our unity. We say it every time we open the class. It's not even about strength. It's saying, your success is in your unity. That's what it's saying there. It's an upgrade. Saying strength, saying your success is in unification. Yeah, working with each other. Yeah, our failure is in our individualism. Yeah, so everybody has to be strong. Everybody has to be at a certain level in order to work or do their job within a set system. Understood? Excuse me. And so this is what we're learned about, is that it's already kind of ordered to do that. Our individual decisions can take us off the path. Do you understand? Now, obviously, if certain things, because certain people know and want to utilize us and for their own purpose and advantage, then they can seek to change or alter what is already naturally there. What we're going through, I suppose, as a process, is cleansing ourselves up so that we can be realigned once again. So when these changes happen, we are a part of it and optimized to maximize the benefit of that taking place. Understood. Any questions?
Yes, we have a question from GP. Did Allah even ever exist?
At a point in time where, when you talk about the myth of it, no, but the idea of an Allah and the stories surrounding it did in the minds of the people who believed it. Yeah, and for them, it was necessary at a certain point in time for their growth. The issue is it was nothing to do with our vibration of things. Yeah, so it only existed to them at the point where somebody came along and introduced the concept of that to them, isn't it? Yeah, in the creation of Islam, because Allah, as you know, is El Elo in the Torah, so it's the same word, which we translate as the source. Yeah, but El Elo, or the Elo, remember, is not a singular, it's part of a group. So Elo is singular, Elohim is two, you understand? And Elohim, for example, is three or more. So that's a group, understood? It's about El Elo, or Al, which it should be, that's separating one out of the group out of it. And so Allah in itself is singular, obviously Alihat is plural. So at the time when it came along, they translated it from Hebrew into Arabic, as we call it, that level, Arabic, then yes, that was straight. But that was a doctrine, remember, designed by the Catholic Church to control the environment called Mecca, which is rightful name should be Becca. Yeah, so all the shift of those terminologies, in that sense, Allah was created, in the translation. And and of the creation of this new religion as a methodology of controlling people and places. So in the same way today, Christianity, for example, you understand, in its essence, isn't it? When they say the term Jah, we know the term Jesus or Jah, Zeus, remember it's a combination of Roman and Hebraic teachings, again, coming together to control a group of people. So in that essence, when you change it from what it was, you're creating a new religion. And so that gives birth to those tones of that. And then remember, those tones now, over time, get images. Yeah. And a whole doctrine then is built around it. So you have to look at it in that context. No, all these things go back to, which is what you were taught in Jesus Found in Egypt. They all go back to the sun. And so, yes, they go back to the sun. Yeah, Allah is the light and the heavens and the earth. Correct? It's the sun. So when you peel back all the layers to see what it really is as in your journey as an ontologist, it all goes back to the sun. S-U-N, sun. Now, which is the Ba'h Yaanuwn anyway, because that's the Ba'h Yaanuwn are suns. Understood. So this is, essentially where that confusion comes in, because we're existing in an environment where all those myths exist. And so we're having to walk back to see what it all really is. But it was necessary for a certain point in time. The same way, if you think about it, in removing the poison of our minds, Islam was used as a tool to remove the poison. So in the antidote, you use some of the poison as part of the cure, isn't it? So we walked through those different degrees or schools in order for them not to have control over us again, because we now are learning about it, and then so you learn what it is, but then you also learn what it isn't. You understand? So you learn what it is first, and then somebody then teaches you, okay, now you know what it is, let me now clean it up for you. You understand? So you clean it up where it becomes truthful, but then now you need to step away from truth into reality. So truth is relative to the environment that it's in, understood, which is different from the reality of all. Yeah, so then you step back now once you know it and say, okay, well, this is what it is. Because now you can, in proximity, well, somebody who's walked those schools can look at it now in proximity and see that actually that's lower down the staircase. So if you understand that as we've been walking this journey with the master teacher on a short walk on a long path, instead of moving in a straight line path from A to B, in actuality, in the new time perception, we have been moving in a spiral staircase. So we've been walking in a similar direction or shape of direction, but going each time we walk, each time we complete the cycle, we're on a higher level of understanding. So you can look back at those old things now and say, okay, well, in my proximity to it, I learned something from it, but that's not the real thing. I can see the illusion now from my perspective. Is that necessary for new people who are encountering Wu-Sabat today? Not really, you understand? But I suppose if you're teaching other people and somebody asks a question, hey, what is this? Then it's better to have some knowledge of it. So it came along at a certain point, but is it real? No. Those things talk about the sun. That's the reality behind those elements there, if you take it back to its absolute source. Any other questions?
There's a question from Maruf. How do you replace the collagen in your body if it's too low?
That's not an answer necessarily I can give you directly. So there are foods that naturally contain that. So I think chlorophyll foods, you understand, greens and things of that nature. But that's something I can't answer directly. You're going to have to look into that. And what will help the body produce its own. But certain types of food can do that. I know greens do help with that, but so maybe I have to come back to you with an answer. But that will be your direction, looking at type of food content that you are taking in to help produce that. You can get it as well in powder form, certainly after any sort of prolonged period of fasting. That's one of the things that you use to rebuild the line of the stomach, so it deteriorates obviously after long periods, maybe water fast, etc. I'm talking about long periods. I'm talking about 10 days, 15 days, 20 days. So very long, prolonged fasting, liquid fasting. So collagen can be helpful, and you can get it in powder form. So as I say, look for foods that help contain it or help the body to produce it. Any other questions?
That's it for the questions.
Yeah, there are no further questions.
Okay, as usual, I've run probably over time. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'll have to continue this as I keep saying final and then shifting it. There's a lot on the table still left. What I'm going to do, I'm going to show one thing before we will go through these in more detail. However, let's just maybe end on this point and then come back to this. It'll be the same or slightly different title, but finish off what we're talking about. So here, when we go back to Man from Planet Risks, the reason why I'm saying to us is that we have to understand what, in the context of what's being expressed in our doctrine. Remember, in the actual facts and the Paterette, there is a level of assumption that we've walked through certain schools, but it also does help us to, if we've never encountered it before, we read it for the first time, it's going to do with that. But we also do need to be cognizant of what was written before and how certain things line up. So here you see, we are being taught here that that what we consider to be solid, liquid, and gas are not actually solid, liquid, and gas. Yeah, so as we were talking about earlier. So it says we have 3 continents. So question, does the planet Risk have different continents like Earth? Answer, yes, we have 3 continents that have mountains, plains, and deserts. However, on Risk, they live in dimensions which could be compared to solid, liquid, and gas that you claim you have on Earth. In actuality, water is a solid is a solid, and gas is a solid, having minute particles. So in Earth, there are no liquid and gases. Earth is a world of matter. What you Earth beings don't want to accept that this whole planet, including the beings on it, are part of a living organism moving through space. It is alive, a living mass of matter, even down to the energies like electricity, which is a form of matter. Positive and negative charges are atoms. At the base of the atoms, there are solids called protons and neutrons and electrons. So your atoms are matter and your atoms are made of the same thing. So in our understanding, remember, we must retain an open mind as we are kind of being pushed into what is a liquid crystal, understood, but having retained understanding, okay, cool, that's not, it's all matter. It's all really solid in that context. You understand? As we're pushing through. And this is the reason why we must understand, what does the master mean when he's saying solid? Do you understand what I'm saying? What does he mean when he's saying solid as the teacher? So if you're in a Kung Fu class or something, you're going to defer to your sensei to learn the style or method of what you're learning about. Some things are taught direct, some things are taught more indirect. Okay, do 100 of these particular things, and maybe when you've done that and you've mastered that, I'll teach you the context in which it applies. You understand? You don't necessarily get everything called in one go, depending on the person's teaching style. So it's important that when we're picking up certain things, so yes, we can read around a subject, but more importantly, let's see what we can find. Does some of our other books of doctrine explain it, so we can go back and look at it with a certain viewpoint? Understood? So really, the liquid even then has the characteristics of a solid, as gas has the characteristics of a solid, as we understand to be in our doctrine. So understand, sometimes we navigate between the two, understand of both. The other thing here, which I was pointing to one's attention, is here, and why, again, to make that sort of same point here, that same point, let's just jump in now. Boom. Is that here is telling you here also at the same point, also at the same time, so talking about this equidistant point where the 3 suns on the planet are shining at the same time. Yeah. On the planet. Yeah, so that's what it's describing. It says also at the same time or point, they perspire and transform from Riskian into Etherian and from Etherian into Riskian. You transform too. Every time you perspire, something leaves from your body. So you can see that water and has a secret or transformative quality, isn't it? Where water is always seeking to return to other water. And so here is explained that the Riskians obviously are the physical aspect of that particular group or species, and their transformation journey is to transform it into full energy and without a body as Etherians. And they go through a process where that happens to them, which is the same as us if you're on a basketball court or whatever, or playing football. And sometimes you see the person, it could be the weather's maybe a little bit cold, and you see all this steam coming off of their body. That is us transforming from physical into ether. Yeah, because the water in our body is transforming, it's returning to other forms of water. Now we understand now, when we read this context, that basically it's all matter, it's all solid in that context. But this is important here, which is why I say we have to understand what's being spoken about in our doctrine, is because it says you transform too. Every time you perspire, something leaves your body. They do this just one time within their year, which is 3 years because they have 3 sons. They don't have children and have no overstanding of children. So they don't have any understanding of children. So how are you the children of the Natharu? So I'm saying here, correct? They don't have any understanding of children. But in most of the books, it says, you're children of the Natharu. A reason why we need to understand what is meant when the word children is being used in that context. I mean, that's an interesting way to leave the class on that thinking. Any other questions before we close?
No, there are no questions.
So what we'll do to conclude this class, we will cover, we'll go back over and explore liquid crystal in a part I refer to as the prism. So we need to understand what light energy is being let through and what is being blocked for us as individuals, because we don't want to let that. We naturally can absorb all colors within the spectrum, but what we are understanding is that these bilayers are designed to let through some energy and block out others. That's why it's semi-conductive. It's not fully conductive. Half. There's a block, allow some things through and others are blocked. So we're going to go through that just in a bit more detail in and around that, and that will help us to conclude our understanding of liquid crystal and, as I say, the human body in the context of the kind of universal network. So that's us closing out for the year at least. Our next class is a bit of a long one, gap. We're back on 6th of February. So we'll finish this class, but we're moving on to this subject. We are closing out this subject. And the next class is M-Other. So I don't think we've got a lot to do on here. It's M-Other. Circle of Existence. So that is going to take several parts, a lot of symbolism in there to do with ancient Egypt. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, then certainly check us out and join us for that. So a lot of the symbolism, especially around this letter M, understood? M, mother, The M is a sound EM, which means of in the Sabatic language. Yeah? So there's a lot in here we need to unpack. They're nice class, we can kind of move from what we were, spend some time understand a bit more about existence, how it's structured, how it's formed, some of the numbering, the numerology side as well, getting into that for this class. We need to finish off what we're doing. So unfortunately, I keep saying final part. So any questions before we close? We're back on the 6th of February, so it gives you time to go back over some of the stuff so that when we go into it, we can, doesn't have to be tree explanation. Go ahead.
Yes, no, yes. There is a couple of questions. Don't know how you choose to answer them. When you quoted they don't have children, Dermot has asked that same question. They don't have children with a question mark. And then after that, Dermot has also asked, what is liquid gold, which has been covered in previous classes.
Okay. There's both of them done it.
Yeah. Before I move on, I'm just giving you these.
Let me take one at a time. Let me take one more time. Yeah. Put your faith in my memories is a bit more probably.
Right. Okay.
So the first one was about the children.
They don't have children. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So good point. So what I'm saying to you is that. That's a question for us to be left. So when the word children of Thar is used, what does it mean? Because they don't have any concept of it, according to that book. Yes, but then when we're using it, children is being used. So it's one of those ones where I want to say to you, think about it. Because this doctrine is not there for us to kind of just read and accept. It's forcing us to think. So that's an interesting one. Yeah. If they don't have any concept of children, then what does children mean? And then how do they procreate? How do they procreate? It's an interesting one. Yeah, so I'm leaving it open deliberately. Yeah, we can explore it more in future classes. Not I'm saying I have the answer, but there is an answer, which certainly from our side of things, of how it's been expressed to us, we do understand it from an actual facts point of view. Let it sit with you for a while and see if you can find the answer. If you're struggling with anything in the doctrine, Sasu, Timu, Hiru, Hakinu is a mantra that's used to help the individual focus their subconscious mind to get the answer that they're looking for in the doctrine. Sasu, Timu, Hiru, Hakinu. What was the next question?
Sorry, I didn't press unmute. The next question from the same person was, what is liquid gold?
Excuse me. So probably a bit long to go into that here, but it's basically gold in its monatomic state. Yeah. So there's a Partarat referred to as Partarat Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn, B-A-N-A-N-U, Ba'h B'ah Yaanuwn. That deals with liquid gold. There's also a master's secret, I think it's called Mafkuzet, The Elixir of Life. Those two books you'd probably want to seek out to get the definition of liquid gold. So Mafkuzet is another thing that's also called. Philosopher's Stone has many different names in different cultures, but it's monatomic, it's elements in their monatomic state. And basically, it has the ability to reorganize junk DNA, for example, one of its purposes when ingested, not to be ordered off the internet. That's not the version that we're talking about here. But yeah, as the ability to one of its properties, it will reorganize junk DNA in the Nagaru humanoid and make it 10,000 times more potent in terms of its ability to conduct electricity. Yeah, so it's one of these properties, and there are other elements, ruthenium, platinum, monatomic platinum. So liquid gold is a kind of catch-all. but it's other elements as well in their monatomic state. Yeah, so there's a process that they go through, which I say I'm probably getting into the explanation of it. There's a process that it goes through where it changes from its solid state. An element of it transforms itself, and the atoms cannot recombine, and then it forms in the form of a powder. So it's almost like a concentrated form. I've got a brief explanation, but the books can go into it, or you can ask it the next time we're in class, and I'll go into it in more detail. So it's just one of the elements needed. Your Ba'h gland originally secreted that within the bloodstream automatically. Yeah, so it was part of our being. When the Ba'h gland was removed, that regenerative, you know what I mean, regenerative, whatever, you know the term, was ability within us was removed. Understood, but it was in our ancestors who incarnated from star constellations like Orion and Cyrus. All right, family. So we're going to wrap up now. So as I say, if you do have any questions, the email address is I think it's at the bottom of the notifications that come out for the classes. So you can email us at alleyesInEgyptMN@AOL.com if you have questions in between the sessions, or as I say, comments under the videos or questions under the videos, we pick those up, or on our Facebook page. Again, All Eyes in Egypt, Midlands and the North. If you put any comments under the videos, we do pick those up as well. So, as I say, everybody take care. Have a good break. Be well rested. Check out, as I say, some of the information there. So when we come up the next time, you can be well informed and not too far behind. And we'll pick it up next year. So enjoy your 2021, and we'll see you again in 2022. Take care, everybody. Stay safe. Omicron is no joke out here. So stay safe. Don't take any unnecessary risks for yourself or for them in your job. Okay. Take care. We'll see you soon.